Well, and then you use the microphone on the laptop.
Well,
That's what it's
streaming
used.
is short.
Yeah, that's and the microphone on the laptop.
Yep, I got it. Okay, I got it. Okay, I'll let you go now. Okay, so we're just gonna message sharing screen.
Yeah.
So we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the mapping group met last week in Buffalo to talk about Northeast Wyoming and the Bighorn Basin. Met again with public and met again last night to develop the recommendations you're about to see. Started at 6 and got done at 11 last night. And for about 3 of the group members, they got to drive an hour to their homes to go to bed and be back here at 8:30. So, 9. Yeah. Any day then. And Brian all made that trek.
And back by 8:30.
And I don't have any certificate with leave. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off with a few proposals here in the Bates Hole, Shirley Basin Local Working Group. Last time we ended, we did these up here in Lander. So we're going to, Casper's here. We're going down here by Pathfinder area and working our way around the Natrona core area. We did these also last time in Lander, right? Yep. Okay. All right. So we're going to start zooming in here. We're going between the Greater South Pass and Natrona core.
Just the folks, the green is the mapping team accepted the recommendation. The yellow is they want to discuss it further. And then
We don't have the red and blue now.
we can look at that too.
Okay, that's just helping.
Up there.
There we go. Okay. All right. So 2 proposals in the same general area. This is the Grieve unit that has been talked about some today. Proposal, this is within the local working group. Wasn't asked for specifically by the company, but when you put disturbance up there, you see wells in here, so it seemed to fit the criteria for removal along the edge of core based on that disturbance. This proposal to add actually links these 2 core areas, Greater South Pass, Natrona. This is called Sachin Creek through here. I haven't been on the ground there. The folks that are on the ground say that that's classic sage-grouse habitat, and the name fits the area. There is not a lek in this, a known lek in that area, however. There was, both of these are consensus, unanimous consensus or not?
17K was a 9-2, and this one, 17L is unanimous.
Okay, so within the Sgit mapping group last night, this was 9-2 in favor of removal. It was unanimous of the local working group removal, and it was unanimous by both groups to add this. Moving on to the southeast. Yeah, so this is Pathfinder, these Pedro's proposal to remove the broken juniper, timbered ridges, unanimous by both groups. To the south of that, a sagebrush, I'll call it peninsula for lack of a better term right now, here with a lek in it. Again, unanimous of both groups to add that parcel there. Likewise, down here, a small addition that buffers this large lek a bit more following the habitat, and I believe there's a lek underneath. Yeah, there's a small lek in that as well. Again, unanimous by both groups. Moving to the east a little bit, this is Chalk Mountain. Go ahead and put what we know of the wind stuff in here. This one gets a little bit complicated. There are 3 different stages of potential wind in here. This area in 2010 was proposed by the local working group to be core. There was an active wind development planned in here. My understanding is that that particular project is now not there. However, this one is quite far along in the process. So last night, and this does have local working group consensus to add. Last night, the Sgit mapping group was in agreement to trim it to the edge of that boundary, wind boundary. There is another polygon in here that also has, do we have that or not? No.
Nicholas gave it to me, but the map might have been so
Okay. All right. There is another wind project in here that has another small inclusion here. And then there's a third. This one is much less further along. It involves an application that's been submitted to the state lands on these parcels, but that is as far as it has gotten. Did I summarize that accurately? Did I get anything wrong?
We're just going to follow up with the wind lease.
I'm sorry?
Because some of the northern piece we can't find. We're going to follow up. Okay.
Right. Nicholas, we have a map, but they didn't want to share that, or what was the deal?
They had contacted myself and Mary to ask if they were in the area. They hadn't provided any official comments. They asked us to keep the data to ourselves for now. But they are in that particular area.
So, yeah, there you have that. But this one, so there's 3, but this one is not very far along in this internal. Okay, move along. Okay, this is the Shirley Basin Mine area. This is a proposal to re-enter this area that was formerly surface mined. It's now in situ, is that right? Yeah. The proposal was for this larger polygon, and I think even a bit larger. This, yeah, put on the original proposal so you can see what the
This is your original.
okay, I thought it went up. The permit boundary, I guess, goes up a little further. Okay. So the original proposal was for this outside line to be removed. The local working group was in consensus to definitely remove this portion around where the actual mining will occur. Down here, there's reclamation going on from former mining activities. The working group was somewhat split on this. Um, uh, Some thinking that if this was not in core, it would receive less attention from a reclamation standpoint, that it might, the reclamation might benefit in there if it was still in core. The working group also wanted to keep this creek bottom, drainage bottom at least, in core. And the company was okay with that. Last night, what was the tally, Dave?
So this 17E removal is unanimous.
Unanimous for this?
Yes, and 17F was a 10-to-1 to leave in.
10-to-1 to leave this portion in. So unanimous to remove, majority leave this in core. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is habitat edge issue here, fairly large area, but this, we changed the distribution map for sage grouse based on this topography and timber. And so to match those lines, both groups were in unanimous agreement to remove those timbered rough country. Perspective, where Casper's here, this is the Hat 6 country here. This is kind of the pass between the Bates Hole and Hat 6 country. Okay, moving up to this one. This is a proposal from the Casper BLM, the outside line, based on some, go ahead and put those winter observations, some winter data in here. The local working group was in consensus to add that. These blue dots are the winter dots. Last night, the discussion was that this is one winter's flight. Most of those blue dots, that really didn't meet the threshold for winter. One of these two dots is over 100 birds, and go ahead and put the nesting or the density buffers on. So so last night the group made a recommendation to trim this back to follow the lek buffer. It captures where the largest group of birds were that particular winter, but does not include all of this this area. Okay, that's it for Bates Hole. We'll move across I-25 here north of Casper into the North Glenrock Core.
First, oh, I'm sorry, is this all still Casper, or are you going northeast?
No, we're going northeast. We're
All
down
right,
to Casper.
questions, comments on Bates Hole? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, moving to the North Glenrock Core area. This, you heard comments on both of these proposals this morning for Mr. Cooper and Mr. Nicolason. Mr. Cooper submitted a proposal to remove all of his private lands from core, which you see with the yellow squared off polygons. There was an alternative suggested in the local working group that would follow this yellow line and remove the western portion of this. And let's go ahead and put disturbance on there. This is a 4-bird lek peak for the last 3 years. This has not had birds on it the last 3 years. Here's the disturbance in the area. Wells here, this is a wildfire. The larger leks being here. So the attempt was to keep the larger leks with the alternative. The attempt was to keep the larger leks within core, but address the proposal and remove existing disturbance. So last night the votes were, this was non-consensus. Some folks supporting the Mr. folks supporting the alternative. And what I'm not, folks supported no change at all, but it was non-consensus on all of these ones within the local work. So last night was,
So unanimous to not remove the 20A1.
Which is the private.
okay, so unanimous not to carve out just the private lands.
And it was split evenly on the local working group. So what's 8-2, that line there.
So 50-50 split on this. So this is definitely one you're going to have to discuss more. Moving over here to this small area, we thought until yesterday that this was a minor addition, so it didn't receive the level of scrutiny from anyone. The proposal was simply to buffer this lek by 0.6 mile. But Mr. Nicolason pointed out by doing wind permit area, which was, as you can see, was specifically excluded in 2010. So with that information, from a game and fish perspective, we pulled it out, and the group was in unanimous agreement not to add that, primarily because of the wind, but it's out. Okay, moving east to the Douglas core area. Fairly complicated set of proposals on top of proposals from the BLM and from and also some tweaking by the local working group. We look at, let's see, so within the local working group, there was consensus to remove this upper area, which is a large wildfire in here. The difference in lines here is just what BLM proposed versus what Chesapeake proposed. Last night was.
So on the larger area, which incorporated sort of 6A1 that incorporates that other one, was 10-1 to not remove.
So this is the case where there's a split between the Sgit mapping group and the local working group. So it was 10-1 by the Sgit group not to remove this. Primarily because of the restoration activities going on there, and the thought that area it's not an anthropogenic disturbance in there, that through work and hopefully some natural succession, that will one day return to sagebrush habitat. This proposed addition on the west is sagebrush habitat, but very little documented bird use in there. So the local working group was not in consensus on that polygon, and the Sgit group was
9-2 to not add, with also the additional information that was with 6C down below.
okay. Did everybody hear that? 9-2 not to add. Okay, moving to, so there was a proposal from the BLM to remove this entire polygon. The local working group pared that down. Let's zoom into this, if you could, Nessa, and take off so we can see underneath. There's subdivision in here. It looks like this on the ground. Okay. But this was a sagebrush flat out here, so they suggested not removing this polygon. And last night, the vote was,
It was a vote of 6-5 to remove, with the concern being protection for that 22 bird line.
okay, so there was not much consensus in our group last night, pretty evenly split last night on that particular polygon. In terms of the larger polygon, what was the vote?
So the BLM polygon, sorry,
Yeah, the big one.
the BLM polygon that's there in the green was a 10-1 vote to leave it in core.
So, and that would be consistent with what the local working group did, was not to remove the green from core. On the south end here, this, let's go ahead and zoom in. Mostly non-habitat in there, with few or no bird observations. Kind of see the difference in habitat here. So the working group was in consensus to remove that. The vote last night was
9-2 to remove.
9-2 to remove. Some of the, some of a consistent theme through the night was the math calculations with the DDCT, both from a leaving disturbance in core, not carving out disturbance, because that allows more disturbance within core. But it works the other way as well, that when you remove, like in this case, non-habitat, you're reducing the overall size of the area, your DDC shrink, so it becomes easier to hit that 5% threshold. And then also quite a bit of discussion just on appropriate buffers as they relate to either suitable habitat or not. Some folks, habitat should not be part of that discussion. It should just be distance, period.
Tom, what's the distance from that 22 left to the 6C?
I'm sorry?
What's the distance from that left to the?
Oh, okay.
1.9.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to go through these fast, but do interrupt me if you have questions. Okay. Moving north under base. Okay, this used to look like a seahorse, but when we're done with it, it may not anymore. So,
With the back.
seahorse on the back. Okay.
You want to start down here?
Yeah, we've got a series of Forest Service proposals to add core, primarily based on their viability policy, which the Sgit has talked about several times over the last few years. So we'll start with this polygon, which is adjacent to the existing core, the town of Denver. It's right here. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that a bit. Local working group was not in consensus on this, but it was majority do not add. The Forest Service is a member of this local working group, so obviously they supported their own proposal. Last night, the vote was
6-5 to add.
6-5 to add. So split within the Sgit mapping group. Okay, moving north. Is this the M Creek?
This is in Creek.
Okay. Again, a proposal from the Forest Service. The lines look the way they do. They've only addressed their surface ownership in these proposals. Same result with the local working group. Consensus was not reached, but majority -1 to not add that. Last night, the vote was
8-3 to add.
8-3 to add from the Sgit mapping group. Apparently, this is a state section. Is that correct?
That's
and
right.
This is a private landowner who was supportive of adding. Is that right? Or didn't
Yeah,
care or
is supported.
supportive?
And there's one 3-bird black there.
This is where you're talking about birds going back and forth to reclamation and.
Yes.
Just a point of clarification, isn't this exactly what your sideboards asked not to do, create Swiss cheese or islands?
Depends on how big it is. That doesn't look pretty big.
It's 25,000 acres, I think, 26,000 acres.
26, 3 birds an acre.
Remember, this is Northeast Wyoming.
3 bird back.
All right, talk a little slower.
Big looking.
Okay, you'll have your crack at this here. Okay, this is, we're still in the Thunder Basin core. This is a proposal from the Forest Service to remove this outside polygon based on habitat disturbance and prairie dogs. The working group was again in non-consensus, -1, not to remove this from core. Last night, the discussion was similar, but there was a proposal made to go ahead and remove this parcel right here. A small piece of it. And the vote on that last night was
10-1 to remove.
10-1 to remove just this piece. This has received quite a bit of discussion and public comment as well. Okay, zooming out so I can get my bearings again. Okay, we'll go over here to the west side of the Seahorse.
So there's a Forest Service one under that. So
Okay, yeah.
maybe that one first.
Okay, there's a Forest Service proposal down here, again following their property boundaries. There's a proposal from a local working group member to consider this entire polygon. After discussions at the local working group meeting, looking at the details of habitat, existing disturbance, mine credits, bird use, and so forth, the working group was in consensus not to add this. And last night, the vote was
Unanimous to not add.
unanimous not to add. Moving across.
Tom, did you
Yes.
want to, the Forest Service was done separately and there was a different vote on that if you.
Oh, there was? Okay,
There
I'm
was.
sorry. The Forest Service polygon within that last. Oh,
So
that's
it's-
right. I'm sure there was.
Right,
Different
yes,
vote.
there was a different vote on that one. So that one was a 10-1 to not add.
Well, it's much different.
Well,
Dennis begs to differ.
but I just wanted to be on the record.
Let the record show that Dennis voted to keep it in.
Okay, again, a proposal from a local working group member trying to tie things together up here. Proposal was to link across this area. Based on some bird observations, there's no flex in there. There is some disturbance on the north end here, but at the same time, the group received a proposal to link from the north, and in the end, the working group decided to favor this one based on the birds and reject adding this one. And that was unanimous, I believe, by both.
The rejection of that was a 10-1 not to add on 18B, and then you're correct, the upper one was a unanimous to add.
Okay, just for 18B, it was 10-1 not to add that, and it was consensus within the local working group not to add that. Okay, so we'll do this one separately. Don't want to forget this one down here. This is a proposal to link The original proposal went all the way down to the core area. It's been modified based on the public input process and the local working group process. With this disturbance through here, these wells following the boundary of those units, excluding the wells, idea being that that's flyover distance. There's also an underlying Forest Service proposal right in here. Okay, see how it lays, a little piece of it is outside, but that's actually a recreation area now. I believe somebody said it was a reclaimed bentonite pond or something like that. It's, so it's used as a recreation site. So everyone was in agreement not to add that little chunk. And then this is a rare earth mine facility, and the boundary was adjusted, well, by everyone. The proponent, Joe Sandrini, adjusted that, and that was consented to by everyone involved. Okay, and the other thing that's going on here that everybody needs to be aware of, this is the proposed, what's the name of the power line? Tekla Osage power line. So need to figure out with that, but the local working group was in consensus to add that, and the vote last night was unanimous to add. So that's something we'll have to deal with city level. Okay, going to the south. Proposal to remove this slice of the, is that Newcastle Court? Yes. This is the highway across here. Was the rationale for removing that. The local working group was in consensus to remove that. Last night, though, it was the opposite.
Unanimous to leave in core.
Unanimous to leave in court. So
protection for that, primarily protection for that 14 bird luck. And I think on the WAS, I think we have use in there. And nothing new and compelling to take that out.
Fort Timber Left would be 2 miles. Right now it's.
now that's the original is following the buffer. Yeah.
Yeah, the development's been nothing new.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to be moving across the highway to.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
This is another Forest Service proposal. This was non-consensus by one in the local working group. Majority was not in favor of that addition, and I think the vote was the same within the working group last night. There was one in favor of adding that. The rest were opposed based on habitat and birds. Okay, moving to the north, to the connectivity area. Going to Montana, off of the Gillette Corps. We'll put the chapter 33 on there. This is a proposal to add to this connectivity area. There was also a proposal up here that was actually rejected at the local working group level. There was just a lot of bentonite, existing bentonite mining in there. It just did not fit with addition, so that was just taken off the table. This one, the local working group process, survived with unanimous addition, but we received comment last week in Buffalo that hey, this is also being mined for bentonite. And so the vote last night was
9-2 to not add.
9-2 not to add this based on that activity. And these are radio call. This another reason for this proposal. This 14 bird lek, and also these are radio collared birds from a Montana study. This does happen to be the same bird, is my understanding. So just to locate the same bird.
Tom, just another clarification on, there's not existing bentonite mining right now. There's some old bentonite mining and then new stuff also anticipated or planned. In that area.
This is, I believe, either all or some of this is Mr. Bush's property. Some made inquiries to Bob, I know, earlier on core areas. Wanting to be in, actually. Okay, moving to the center of the Powder River Basin. This large purple polygon is a proposal from Wild Earth Guardians and two other environmental groups to add this area as a new core based on the density mapping. But go ahead and put wells on. Just producers.
Wyoming commissions.
Yeah, you got your own gas commission person here. Okay, so in the local working group, there was consensus not to add. Last night it was
Unanimous again.
unanimous not to. I mean, there was sympathy for this area in terms of, you know, it doesn't meet the criteria. We'd like to keep these birds on the landscape, but definition of core, it just doesn't fit for this area. This is an area that certainly is, as restoration comes along, this should be a high priority. I think everybody has agreed to that. But current core definition does not apply. Okay, complicated area here with the East Buffalo core. Let's keep it big perspective for now, because all this works together. We've got connectivity going up here, heads on up to Montana. Proposal from Wild Earth Guardians, which you can't see all of here. It's underneath. We'll get it here in a minute. There we go. There's the Wild Earth Guardians proposal to add to core. The yellow polygon is a proposal from the BLM to add to connectivity. The red is a proposal from Game and Fish, and this has since been modified.
Blue line is what Dan said yesterday.
Yeah, but minus this now. This has evolved some over time based on recent observations of sage grouse and also comments about buffering this lek. A lot of this is grassland habitat associated with Craving Road. A couple small additions in here, up here and here. The original proposal was to remove this polygon, but this is where he's seeing activity on these leks where they hadn't been before. So he is suggesting, especially because of the uncertainty of, the idea was this was kind of a package deal, that we get something over here where the birds are and give up something on this side, questioning the reality of that and finding these birds over here. This proposal has been taken off the table from Game and Fish's perspective. And then this removal is still on the table, to remove that. So kind of a complicated set of polygons here, but they all interplay. So we'll, in terms of the Wild Earth Guardians proposal, it was consensus of the local working group not to add of the meeting last night.
It was unanimous not to add.
Unanimous not to add, again, for the same reason as over here. Just the amount of disturbance that's already in here just exceeds that of what can be considered for core.
New permits or the sense and stuff in there.
Yeah, we had to.
I can't hear you.
There's
We're
a
just
bunch
gonna
of new permits too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Next was this proposal from the BLM to, rather than core, to expand this connectivity through this area. The difference, of course, being that the 1 per 640 density does not apply. The 5% disturbance cap would. The local working group was not in consensus on that. I don't recall the exact split on that, but it was a split. Bo, what was last night's?
It was 7-4 to add that as connectivity.
So kicking up to you guys. Moving across, the revision just came in yesterday, so we didn't have a thorough discussion on this last night. Local working group, looking at the original proposal, was in consensus to both remove all of what you see in red and add those two small parcels here. Last night,
So the vote was 9-2 on the removal to not remove. So in other words, to leave it at in-core as it is, and then on the additions there is 10-1 to add that additional area.
so
How that changes.
majority 10-1, add those, and all that was looked at was the outside boundary, just the original proposal. The revision that came yesterday wasn't really considered. It was, okay, we don't have all the information, let's leave that for Sgit to decide if you get to it today. So the revised proposal that you'll need to decide on is whether the blue line and leaving this in here as core.
And taking the stuff across.
And yes, although we did vote on the 17M last night, and that was,
A 10-1 to leave in.
so opposite results of the local working group on that. And that was primarily based on buffers of that. This is, according to the local bylaws, non-habitat here, but that lek is on the edge of that.
There are some observations.
Yeah, there were observations, and then just the concern of if you allow development to come up that close to the lake.
Okay, moving on. Let's see, are we done with one of these? I believe we are.
Yes.
I think we are.
Okay, moving over the hill.
Questions and comments on Northeast?
Bob, I would take a minute. Tim Martin, Gates Petroleum. One of the things that I think it's important that we talk about, that first of all, this East Buffalo core / connectivity has a lot of moving parts to it along the way. There's been proposals and modifications along the way. But oil and gas operators have literally millions of acres of oil and gas leases that are in core areas. And Gates Petroleum is a large holder of leasehold in core throughout the state. And in the course of the time in which the executive orders have been in place, Gates has not developed a single facility in core. And so we've adapted the philosophy that I think is aimed first and foremost of avoidance.
And one of the tools that we've been able to use in order to accomplish that has been, especially in northeast Wyoming, to go to areas where we had existing coal bed fields and to develop deep plays in those existing coal bed fields. And that does a number of things. First of all, it concentrates development where development has been already. It takes advantages of existing roads, existing pipelines, existing electricity, compression, all sorts of reuse or additional use of those facilities. I don't know if it's possible in the connectivity proposal to show the existing wells again. Is that possible in the yellow, kind of the most recent connectivity proposal? But when you look at this area, it is heavily developed currently with coal bed wells. There's a substantial amount of coal bed wells in that yellow area that is the kind of proposal for connectivity. And Yates Petroleum has coal bed wells in there, a number of them, and Yates Petroleum has identified deep prospects that we are working on permitting in this area. And one of the concerns that we have is that the tool we would use to develop, that we have used to avoid developing in core and or connectivity would be hampered by this proposal, because to reach some of that leasehold, it actually would be easier, or it would be accomplishable to drill that leasehold from core out to this leasehold that we're talking about, rather than go to the previously disturbed area and make use of all of those facilities and roads, et cetera, that we've done in other areas in that philosophy I talked about that has allowed us to not put a single facility in core. And so we think that when given that information and the amount of development that is in that polygon, that it would be well worth considering to consider that disturbance very substantially. In addition, I also wanted to, while I had a minute, I wanted to thank all of the folks on the Sgit for what are endless hours of work, late and early and long travels and time away from family. And while there have been those that have chastised this plan, I think that Wyoming has a plan out there, and so I compliment you on your work, and thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, go ahead, Angie.
Angie Burkhalter with the Energy, and my comments are focused on the M Creek proposal that the mapping subcommittee approved to incorporate in core last night. The local working group in this area, there was no question, this was not really even considered. They did not, there was no consensus whatsoever to incorporate this into the core area. Really, this area is it's inconsistent with the core area strategy. It has very few birds in it at all. The habitat is not high quality habitat like the core area should be. As you can see from here, and it was mentioned, this has a lot of areas that are non-federal lands. Private lands interspersed in here, so there's not even a significant core area that's undisturbed. It's very fragmented as it is. It's also not connected to other core areas. So basically, you can see it's an island out there. It's a pod sitting out all by itself. It's a very small area. The Forest Service has allowed oil and gas development, so they've allowed leasing in this area. Currently, it's available for leasing right now. And the Forest Service, in their proposed land use planning documents, every alternative allows this except for one alternative oil and gas development. So there are a number of companies, and my company as well has made, commitments, because we thought in this area it's not going to be core. So to have this included as core now would be problematic for those companies who have focused on trying to stay out of core. So we would recommend that the mapping committee and Sgit reconsider this and not include it in the core area.
Thank you, Angie.
Just a point of clarification, what was the vote on that again from last night?
This was that was 20, what's number 26?
982, and I haven't done this discuss, so it was split.
It was a split.
So I thought we had Pete, add, remove,
Yeah.
discuss with the main body.
Okay, so then technically I didn't reach the consensus level, so it wasn't quote approved last night, right? So just so you know how that math works.
And in defense and praise of that mapping subgroup, this was a wide open process, okay? So what you're getting is two cuts at what the recommendations are, and as you've seen, sometimes local guys said one thing and this group said another, and then ultimately it'll come to the table. Just remember that. Tom, do you have something?
Yeah, this is back to the connectivity corridor. I'm on the Northeast Local Work Group, and when we were tasked with creating a connection in Montana, we chose an area based on connections to LECs along the way. And we followed Nick's paper that basically explained how far they need to be, or how close they need to be for it to be considered connectivity. And we had the luxury of dealing with that, and it was relatively undeveloped, and it still is today. And you can see from the radio telemetry work that held up is being used. So I feel pretty pleased about that. And then adding the next connectivity proposal, my question is, are you going to rewrite at least a page worth of best management practices that we had for this first connectivity to adapt to the next one that is approved, because it's not likely going to meet the bar that we set for this one.
That's correct. And I think that's the point that's been raised. So, no, we're not going to have separate. All right, let's give. Oh, sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Well, I think it's appropriate if I say something about my project. I met with Governor Freudenthal before the first executive order was signed, and the governor said, we aren't going to touch this for 5 years. You'll have to wait 5 years. And so I waited the 5 years, and I worked on it. And I don't think people understand what it's like that this is my private property that a group of people that are mostly strangers to me are deciding what the future of my private property is. It would be like coming home and finding a bunch of people sitting in your living room looking at your 401k and your investments and deciding your estate plan. Because that's what you're doing. You're deciding the future of my private property. Included in that is my grandfather's homestead, my father's homestead. Lands are very important to us. And we've been in operation for 127 years. And we've lived with the sage grouse. We like the sage grouse. That if the federal government's predator policies were different, you probably wouldn't be in this problem. It really doesn't do any good to antagonize and isolate the people that live the closest to the grouse. And so what I wanted to demonstrate was whether or not I could remove my private property. And so that's up to you guys. And while it's always said you guys aren't the deciders, you're a lot closer to the decision than I am. This is as close as I can get. The governor doesn't attend these meetings, and I can't talk to the governor directly unless he wants to. So this is where you get to decide the fate of my property that I pay taxes on, that I own. And I don't think you would be as willing to place your own property into a public forum like this.
Thank you, Doug. Lori, did you have something?
I do. Thank you, Bob. Largely from Chesapeake Energy, and I would echo that. I know this team has a very difficult job, and I appreciate the hard work you're doing. as we have followed the Chesapeake, I hear kind of what Tom just said, it does not meet the core area criteria. So I kind of have a couple of questions. That statement has come up when in the Southwest and Sgit, where the local work group said that core area did not meet the core area criteria. And so my question is, there are different statewide standards for the core area criteria between Northeast and Southwest? And then just hearing Tom now say that there were some, in the East Buffalo, some discussion that did not meet the core area criteria. So do you evaluate, are there same standards, or even in the Northeast, are there different core area criteria that you use to evaluate if you remove?
Lori, I think the answer is both. There are different standards in the Northeast based on the habitat framework and the ecological condition, and those are acknowledged in the executive order. As far as the process to remove or put in, there is consistency and should be. But as we've said from day one, much of this is driven by local conditions. So comparison to Sgit, if you'll recall, there was a recommendation came in and said, we think we should just take this out. That was sent back to them, I think relatively firmly with not quite so fast. You need to evaluate what's there, what it is that you think makes it come out. And I'll be very honest with you, I'm not thinking that we ought to be really crazy about just removing entire core areas at this stage in the game. So now, if the team decides that and recommends that, fine, I will support that. But I don't think there is a different standard. I think they are the same. And the reality is this too. There are core areas that have more than 5% disturbance in them. And at the time we did that, every single one of those we weighed. It's an imperfect process. I'm the first one to tell. I don't think it's fair to say that there's a standard between Sgit and
And I can understand that. I think Tom and I had a really good discussion about that. And I totally agree with the different environments. I think where I was more, my question came up as we were talking about in the Northeast. And I guess my question, are the core area criteria, the 5% threshold, and the disturbance and density, or those, when you say core area criteria, is that what you're in this group?
that's part of it. The core areas were developed based on breeding birds, suitable habitat, what existing disturbance was there. That whole package with each core area, the group has gone through multiple times and said, okay, what is and what isn't an area that we should manage for sage grouse sustainability over time. And to use an example, the buffalo is a good one. I think at that time, if you looked at bird distribution, your core area would have been one. When you added the existing footprint of industrial development, that core area and so you have all of those different factors weighing into how they were developed. Again, it's an imperfect process, and by its nature. However, I think I would say this, that it may be imperfect, but nobody's come up with a better.
And I would agree, and I'm not trying to criticize by any means.
No,
I'm not trying to say DCA should be taken out by any means, but when you do evaluate it, we see if there's some areas that, you know, can be adjusted. But
Appreciate that.
thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go to the Bighorn Basin. Oh, sorry.
Tracy Gilman, competitor. A couple questions, not really about a specific area. In the Northeast, I noticed that there were several where the Sgit sub-team actually was sort of reverse of the little working group in the Northeast. What kind of strategy, or did you guys ask those folks anything about specific reasons why they carved out or added to? And, you know, was there different information that the Sgit group used versus the lower working group? Just one of the things.
Can I address that? Because I'll forget the question if I. Yeah, they had the local working group reports of those. So it's just, you know, there's different folks, different opinions, and the balance of the folks was so I mean, that's the human element of this whole thing. And yeah, Sgit's going to have to balance all that.
Yeah, after this, and I think I agree with a couple of the reversals there, but I was just wondering how much that information got. Second question I had was, there's not a whole lot of discussion about corridors, as far as power line corridors, transmission corridors. I think I heard one piece out in the southwest. But other than that, you folks, are you going to integrate that into this process, or have you discussed it?
We've discussed corridors ad nauseam, if you really want to know the truth. Most of the corridors were identified as areas where that transmission would go. And so they've been identified either through BLM plans or through FERC or through this effort. You'll see there's a corridor that goes clear across the state. Now, some of your smaller lines will fall outside that, but basically what we said is these are the areas where we have current transmission or which are best suited to transmission. And that's what people are being asked to follow. And Sherry or you or Gary could comment on that. I mean, we went through this quite detailed process to get to those corridors. Do you have anything you want to add?
And probably just, and one thing and more of a comment, when we look at the southern area and the transmission corridor, there were some proposals that included either moving parts of it or adding parts of it to core, where we may be adding new core in that transmission corridor. Will we extend that transmission corridor in that area? I know we've got it in the language piece, but showing out in the maps, that be included.
Yeah, if you add core under the corridor is still there. Nothing else. Okay. Bighorn Basin.
Okay, moving over the Bighorns, into the Bighorn Basin, we're going to go a little west of Thermopolis. Sits right here. We're going to go to this core area, which is quite a bit of it is on the Wind River Reservation. Proposal from private landowners and Bentonite Company to remove this basically a ridge here that has bentonite outcrops on it, a mineable resource with, from their analysis, very limited sage grouse habitat. But to add this polygon over here, have visited with Pat Nelica, the Fish and Wildlife Service tribal liaison. He has informed the tribes of this. He has said he's been out here on the ground, and yes, this is good habitat, but they don't spend much time over here because it's a long way, and they have not identified a lek in here. Like I said, he has informed the tribes. They have not provided a comment at this point relative to the addition portion of this. The local working group was in consensus to accept the overall proposal of both the removal and the addition. And our vote last night
It was 9-2 to accept the addition and the removal.
9-2 to follow the local working group recommendation to accept this proposal. We're going to move east. This is the Washakie Core. Bighorns up here. Worland sits here. We'll start. Okay, we'll start there.
Sorry.
That's all right. And frame this for us, Nissa. How large are these?
Oh, sure.
152 acres.
Yeah.
Okay.
201 for 30 would be.
Okay.
50 and 100 acres.
So very small. Again, a bentonite issue here, and an addition of what is viewed as higher quality sagebrush habitat here. Local working group consensus to accept that, and within the group last night,
10-1.
10-1 to follow the local working group recommendation. Let's see, okay. This is a proposal from the Worland BLM to remove this polygon from core. This is a large wildfire area. cheatgrass issues. This is a well field, not, what's it called? Murphy Dome, you begin with M. Local working group was not in consensus on this, fairly even split. Yeah, again, it was a natural feature, that wildfire, and that it appeared that a large purpose of that removal was to allow development to the northeast. So a split decision on the local working group, and last night
Unanimous to not remove.
unanimous not to remove that. Okay, let's go straight to the north. Yeah, we'll do this. This was kind of a companion to that removal. Worland BLM said, well, let's add this polygon. Worland sits just off up here, a field associated with the Bighorn River. This is a sagebrush flat, but this is the nearest lek, and these are the observations. The working group was split on this. Some saying that this was buffer distance. Also, it was sagebrush. Basically, a why not add it. But others saying, well, why add it? It doesn't. It's acres rather than important habitat. And last night it was
6-5 to not add.
So we've got a split decision on a fairly small piece. Moving to the east. Okay, this is going to be a larger complex again of proposals. The larger line defined by that outside purple line is from Wild Earth Guardians. You add that entire piece into core. There were other proposals to, again, bentonite related, to shave a couple pieces off. And then the local working group, as part of their, and am I right? This was the local working group suggestion on here, not wow. Okay. So as part of this, let's go ahead and zoom in here. We'll take piecemeal these out. The private landowner also was requested that removal. But get both of those, both the add and so the local working group was in consensus to remove this, but they wanted to add this sagebrush flat down here. And again, bentonite outcrops through this country. And so consensus within the local working group, and last night.
So for the addition in 31H, it was unanimous to add. 31G, it was a 7-4 to remove.
Okay, so that did not reach the definition of consensus within Sgit to remove this. Okay, zooming back out to the larger polygons here. Oh, well, let's take this small. Again, a bentonite issue. There is a mining permit that comes in on the very northern edge here. You can see the habitat in here, a lot of bentonite outcrops. The working group was, and this is how many acres? 400? 400 acres. So local working group was a consensus to remove that last night.
We were 9-2 to remove.
9-2 in favor of removal. Okay, the larger polygon. Well, I guess we'll do the blue one here first. This was a consensus from the local working group. In looking at the larger polygon from Wild Earth Guardians, they did not support the whole area for the reasons we just talked about, and also bird use and habitat. But they did, especially associated with this lek, did think that this was worth adding. Disturbance, but producing wells on, avoided those over in this country. Okay, moving on. We're going to the alkali reservoir area that you've heard presentation about back in January down in Cheyenne. This proposal was modified slightly. This is a small addition to desert land entry that made sense for this overall proposal. That was mentioned at the local working group, but it wasn't a firm deal at that time, so that they just voted on this, the red line, and they were in consensus to remove that. It's mostly greasewood through here. The radio, they would put chapter 33. You see the observations from our wildlife observation system. No observations, none of the radios going in there. And last night, we looked at the entire polygon, correct? It's, including the yellow, and it was
10-to-1 to remove.
10-to-1 in favor of removal of the outside one. And we are down to 1. This is a package deal from Marathon. This is the Oregon Basin field, well known to you on the Sgit as being the poster child for having a activity enclosed within the core area. Proposal from Marathon was to essentially create 2 core areas, trying to meet that definition of not Swiss cheesing. And they suggest in return adding these polygons. This was quite controversial within the local working group, a pretty even split on this, with strong opinions on both sides. Last night, the vote was
9-2 to leave it as is.
Not to, but with a caveat of that the language stuff you've been talking about in terms of this type of issue cover the concern rather than doing it through a mapping exercise. Other concern addressed on here in terms of the addition was the lack of birds associated with them. One of the things that happens in the Bighorn Basin is that it's, I would applaud Marathon for their attempt to go out and try to find areas. But in the Bighorn Basin, over 90% of the birds are already in core. So there's not a lot of opportunity to go out and grab new stuff. So at least some of our thoughts were this is, even if this goes through, that from an addition standpoint, maybe not so much. Okay, and that's it for Bighorn Basin.
Okay, questions, comments on the Bighorn Basin? All right, let's take 10 minutes and then we'll come back and start back with Jackson.
I don't know, for like days at a time.
I'm still working on
They will. And another thing they don't have that would be, yes, foundation.
Right. Yeah.
This is the
operators.
What about the area?
we have so we wanted to have
So I just got an email. Yeah, because there's not going to be on. That was probably your window. Yeah, I think it's probably going to be.
Oh, yeah.
All right, grab a seat. Yep. You're on your own, right? Yeah, yeah. I got it.
Allow me to comment.
I don't want to spend
right, let's get in, get back to it here. Couple of things. The first one, I would like to point out that, you know, after the beating he took last night, Dennis Jager was in the bathroom by himself voting. And he was still losing 10-1. I couldn't read this. Yeah. There are happier days will come. Now, as the process, and this just as a reminder, particularly for those who were here, for some who haven't, we are not going to go through these and vote and tally a vote and say, oh, that one was 7-6, therefore it's a yes or a no. We will follow the same process that we have throughout the course of this, and that will be if all the heads are nodding yes, that one is one that pretty easily gets recommended. If half are no and half are yes, pretty much looks like we aren't going to do that. Each of you individually as a team member, anyone else as a member of the public will have the right to make their case to the governor. But we don't, it's not going to serve us to come out of here with a bunch of decisions that are 50-50 and throw that in the governor's lap and say, here, you pick. So it's not consensus, it's the 80-20 rule, but that's the process I would like to follow. Clearly, the easy, the no-brainers, the ones that everybody has, Tom went through it, nodded at, are going to rise to the top. The ones that are really difficult, the ones that there isn't any agreement on, we're probably going to err on the side of the staff. Just be prepared for that, and that's the process that I'd like to follow. Well, today, and with that, Jax.
Okay, so we'll start up here.
Do what?
Do the whole thing. What they are. Just what you got there is fine. Tom, you have two.
Oh, you want that? You don't want to?
Well, that's what I said. Do you want to see the colors like for the working group proposal, or would you like to see?
I may need it later, but not right now.
What I would suggest is that for this one in particular, you've got 5B and 15B.
You got 4 areas, actually.
Right. And so you had the top 2 that was unanimous, both groups to add. It was unanimous, both groups not to add. Is that correct?
This is what that symbolizes. It
Okay.
symbolizes whether the mapping team accepted, discussed, or rejected.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. In this case, relative to this Jackson, there's 2 policies. This very small one up here that everybody agreed to. It's not a very, very small. Both groups are in support of that. This one technically was not a consensus at the local work group by 1 because the Forest Service actually recommended connectivity there. The rest of the work is for. So technically it wasn't consensus, but vast majority, and within our group
It was unanimous.
unanimous. So both of these are unanimous. So maybe you want to deal with
Thoughts? You've got virtually unanimous from both, or one dissenting vote. Anybody? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, this is the grow on for those I wonder.
Can you put up the imagery?
Bob,
Yeah.
just in general, as we go through this, the question that I'm not sure was addressed in all of these, who was impacted, who will be impacted by this decision? I.e. private lands, existing projects, et cetera. So if that can be noted, if it's known, I think that would be helpful. I don't know how much of that country is private. I would probably say very, very little.
There is some private up in there in that Grovan country. This is one, and I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, Albert, if I'm wrong, tell me, but you can't throw a cat in that Grovan area without hitting some regulation, whether it's a lynx or boreal toad or a speckled cat with a short tail or whatever it is. You've got everything under the sun protected. So you know, does this impact it one way or the other? I don't think it does, Paul, but does it hurt? No, and it does reflect the population that moves back and forth. That's my look at it. Any objections to that recommendation? Okay, move on.
Okay, very quickly, this very tiny polygon, both groups, unanimous or full majority not to add. There's no legs. It doesn't, there's a few birds on the Idaho side, but no legs close. It's a few observations. This is a Forest Service viability policy, so it doesn't connect to this core in Idaho.
Recommendation is not to add. Any objection? Okay.
Okay, this is by Holback, Clark Draw area. Proposal from the Forest Service to add this. There was not consensus in the local working group, although there was majority in this case of the local working group wanted to add this as core. -1. The Sgit mapping group was what, Dave?
This is, I'm going to read 5B. 5B, it looks like could be unanimous to not.
Unanimous not. So this is almost complete opposite between the two groups.
Recommendation from the subgroup is not to add this as a core area. Thoughts? Any dissent with that recommendation? Okay,
Okay, you want to go to South Central?
let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, jumping across the Great Divide Basin, Green River Basin. So Rollins, we're looking within this polygon.
Let's leave that one that laps over into southwest for last.
Yeah. In fact, I would suggest taking it in with the southwest.
Okay, we'll just do that then. That's great.
We have, just look here, this was before we started our numbering, so we've got 4 or 5 Bs. We've got one that we said that we wanted to accept. So we need to go back there when we get done.
But I think that's in the upper green, isn't it?
It's
the Daniel core area.
It could be.
Yeah, that's in the upper. We'll get there. Okay. Okay, let's see. So we won't start here. We'll bags.
We'll go over there right now.
Okay. So I'm going to defer this to Bob. You want an outline of what's proposed, or do you want to state it?
Well, no, I can do it. The proposals, the red line was from Wild Earth Guardians. The green line, the next line over, the green line to the right is the existing core. And then the proposal from Tony Mung, the local biologist, is the other green line, which takes an industrialized area. A2 is a heavily industrialized area, as is 26. I guess that's both the same. That would come out, the yellow would be added, where you can see all of those lecks. This was objected to by GRMR based on prior existing rights. Scott Homer is here. You want to just let him know what your proposal is?
30 minutes.
My name is Scott Holmes. I'm with GRM Oil and Gas. At the past meeting, a representative from GRMR did speak up about that series of proposals. Since then, we have much appreciated a meeting with the Wyoming Game and Fish with Mr. Budd, as well as some of the game and fish staff and some of the Rollins field office DLM folks. And at the end of that meeting, that was a pretty productive meeting, and I have since sent in a letter with a proposal here, and I'll just sum up a few things in terms of the letter, just to be pretty concise as to what we were proposing coming out of that meeting. This letter was created and intended to document GRMR's mutual understanding as a result of that follow-up meeting. Expressed GRMR's continued commitment to work with Wyoming Game and Fish towards the development of existing mineral rights as well as the protection of the sage grouse and sage grouse habitat. Accordingly, GRMR did want to express that we did have existing rights acknowledged under the Executive Order number 2011-5. However, GRMR nevertheless understands the relative importance of the game and fish proposal as shown by the Hmong proposal to Wyoming's broader discussion with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service to avoid the listing of the greater sage grouse as protected under the Endangered Species Act. Therefore, for that reason, GRMR does and will support SGIP's and the governor's adoption of the Hmong proposal on the following terms. First one, approximately 24,280 acres will be added to the core area number 26 as depicted on two attachments that I've put into the letter. One primarily showing the Hmong proposal and the other one just identifying it as E2 on my second attachment. That second attachment is just the latest copy of the sage grouse core area revision proposals as it relates to the entire state. Number two, approximately 3,778 acres will be removed from the western side of the core area number 26 in two separate parcels as depicted on attachment A and proposal A2 on attachment B. Number three, no additional core area acreage will be added on the eastern side of core area number 26 at the northern edge of the base of Battle Mountain. Number four, GRMR will make every reasonable effort to develop the newly added acreage at a density of no more than one pad per 640 acres and to comply with all other core development area prescriptions. Should the density disturbance or area development prescriptions prove physically, technologically, or economically unfeasible, the state of Wyoming will honor GRMR's existing rights and the Wyoming Game and Fish should collaborate to identify a feasible development alternative that will provide optimum protection to sage grouse and sage grouse habitat. Number five, within the remaining historical acreage in core area number 26, both GRMR and Wyoming Game and Fish will cooperate to provide pad location, allowable density disturbance, and other appropriate development flexibility where habitat, lek location, and a refined density disturbance assessment demonstrate that the proposed activity will not cause declines in the sage grouse population locally. Then I just finish off indicating that that's what the letter is, and we look forward to collaborating with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department.
Thank you, Scott.
Thoughts?
Gardner?
Not so much on the letter, but Bob, just, I alluded to it in the earlier discussion on the executive board. It dovetails into this, but what I have a handout here. I think I handed everybody, and I guess because they don't match up with what's on the screen here. The one thing that wasn't shown at the Lander meeting when we went through this, and I was unable to attend, was this. We looked at the LEX and looked at the expansion proposal proposal, and just if you look at that, just one correction to the statement you made. The addition of those bulbs is not heavily industrialized. It's within the boundaries of an existing EIS, but if you look at where the wells are at, and the stuff that's actually being taken out is the stuff that, some of that's already industrialized in core, so we're pulling out those.
That's what I said, I think.
What's that?
That's exactly what I think I said.
You said it was heavily industrialized.
Inside the stuff that's coming out.
Yes, correct.
Right.
Yeah, I thought you said just. Oh, okay, I just wanted to clarify that. But, you know, on the earlier discussion and one of the issues, I guess, that I raised is if you look at that, one thing the Sgit group never got a chance to look at was the telemetry data. And what I want you to look at is obviously you can see the expansion of the core on that first page. The red dots are the wildlife observation forms. The black stuff is something that Sgit's never seen. It's the telemetry data that was collected. Some of these birds are coming off of these lecks, not all of them. Some of them are some on the lecks that are actually out in some of the industrialized stuff. So what we have is we have sage grouse that collect in one area. They move upslope, nest in the higher precip, higher forb insect areas, and then what you see is we see this large winter ranges, and you see that show up in those black dots in those winter concentration areas, and they show up out there west of Bags, out there in the Red Creek. But I think one of the most important things that I think none of the people on Sgit are going to look at is what's going on with these birds as far as their interstate movement back and forth to Colorado. So if you flip to the next page, what you see is those black dots down there are Wyoming birds that were collared on some of those lecks in this area that are going well into Colorado in the winter. The red that you look in that map is actually Colorado is not calling theirs core, they're calling priority areas. And what you see is we've got a lot of Wyoming birds moving out of that proposed expansion area. They're actually wintering in Colorado. I think this is when you look at that, and then if you look at the green squares on that second page, those are actually Colorado birds that have telemetry data on, and it doesn't show on here, but we've got, it's like the third or fourth largest lake in Colorado. Some of their birds are coming out of Colorado and nesting in Wyoming, so we've got a bi-state population down there. We've got mixing of birds on the winter range. We've got Wyoming birds going into Colorado, Colorado birds coming into Wyoming, and if you look at our current core strategy, and even the proposed enlargement of there, we still have a fairly large area down around Dixon that doesn't match up as far as connectivity habitat and stuff. So in the big context of this population, at least from my perspective, somebody who's pretty familiar with this area, this is a reasonable proposal. It doesn't expand connectivity, but obviously some point in time we're going to have to sit down with Colorado and see what's their data is showing birds coming into Wyoming. We've got birds moving in both directions when they finalize their priority area strategy. But some of the discussions earlier that we don't have a lot of good winter concentration area data. With this data that was collected with the Atlantic, those dots represent 4 years worth of winter tagging data, collaring data on those birds. So you can start to see that we're developing some of these things. And the only reason I bring that up is at some point down, getting back to that item number 59 or 53 on there, it says as data becomes available, specific to wintering concentration areas and stuff. This may be one of those issues that may be back before Sgit before 7 years. So it's more of a heads up that the data start to show up. That we've got a lot more issues going on here than we ever anticipated, with grouse moving from both directions across that state line, grouse that are over and start to be able to delineate some of these winter concentration areas with this particular population. You know, again, this proposal, over 300 birds on those legs, so it is a big chunk of sage grouse versus a lot of conversations that we've had. So 3 birds here, 12 birds here. But more than anything else, I wanted to just give a message, that there are some much bigger issues that are coming down the road to deal with this project.
And I appreciate that. I do want to split this because the discussion here is about the addition, and the subtraction, the reconfiguration, the winter stuff. That is interesting to see, I agree, but that's not, this is more.
I agree with that.
So
It's just why the data was handy.
the proposal before you, Scott laid out fairly well, is to manage that as core, the recognition of their existing rights. They've made a commitment to manage that 1 per 640 and less than 5%. Commitment on your end would be to recognize that there may be cases where that can't be done. Your thoughts as far as, do you want to do that or not?
I would like to comment for Larry's sake, you to know that we had a very robust discussion of this importance to Colorado in your absence.
Yeah.
And the data here is very compelling. This is an important cross-state situation. I think it does warrant further review. I don't know that we're in a position to make that review.
You're not. That's not what we're here to do. Right?
No, and I understand that. It was just more of a heads up.
Okay. Thoughts? Anyone else?
So could you throw up the federal units again, please?
And that's the areas. So if I get this right, GRMR is saying yes to Mom's proposal, but given the leases that they have had prior to this, which have their own steps, they would actually change those on their own to accommodate a core standard unless they couldn't, and therefore they would develop under their lease certificate that they actually were given when they bought that.
I'm not going to speak for. Yeah.
Yes, correct. That's what we'd be looking at. Like a great attempt is to mount that new addition as core, likely adjacent to it. We're still through exploration in terms of setting up, drilling out there. We will manage it 1 per 640 with everything that's in the governor's executive order. We recognize there might be a chance that there is a few places where we might have to sit in discussion to alter that a little bit, but every attempt is to manage it exactly as the core adjacent to it.
So that layer that was just added, is that the lease layer then?
Yeah, the light gray is the, well, I guess this is the red line, is the existing EIS boundary that's there.
The light gray units.
Yeah, the light gray is units, and then the little dots and those. Producing things.
If you put leases up there, the screen will go black.
Sure, no, it's,
Well, I was just gonna say, we heard from the proponent, the leaseholders in there. I'd like to hear some perspective from Game and Fish. It sounds like they're the ones that are collaborating.
Tony, you're still here?
Yeah, can't wait to. What's your,
For change.
what's your feeling about this kind of solution?
I'm very hopeful. You know, Mary and her shop coming to a solution that works for everybody. You know, obviously we can't tell what the future is going to be, but at this point, I'm pretty hopeful that we can work through this. I think we are in the makings here of, again, and it's really what I think Wyoming's about as far as trying to make both sides of the coin work. So I'm willing to work with them, they're willing to work with me, and not to say that we're not going to have hiccups along the way or disagreements, but I think as long as we're both at the table, it's going to work well.
Mark, your thoughts?
It's one of those situations where you have to find that happy medium. You know, similar to the Douglas Court area, working with the proponent, I think you've come to that happy medium. I'm not sure we can ask for more than what's up there. So.
Sounds like we're.
When we met in Lander, I think that's what we asked them to be able to do, is try to put the head come to something that works.
I just state my appreciation for the operator that comes to the table with the best intent of being collaborative and finding a way through this. I mean, we knew this was an issue for some time and tried to figure out how to do it. And I really appreciate it coming forward and helping us find a way to preserve that very important battery of birds.
I want to echo that. I do appreciate that. Very much. Okay. We good? All right. Move on. Thank you, Scott.
Staying in that same area, there were a lot of polygons, very small polygons around the edge. I'm just illustrating a potential area, you know, where as Game and Fish, we took a finer tooth comb, just like what you've done with the core area process over the years, to the edge of sage grouse habitat. This was one of them that was proposed to be added to core, but it, unlike, well, you talked about one this morning in northeast Wyoming, the 6th mile on the North Glen Rock, and this one. Those are the only two that received comments that there was controversy about. The rest of them, there have been no comments. I'm going to suggest to the group that you give your blessing as a group, because it's yeah, timber in and out type stuff. You work through them if you want, but in this case, that was part of this agreement. So this actually goes off of the table now as an addition to core.
But the rest you're saying are timber clips, basically.
Yes, timber and/or rough. Here's one. You know, if you want to look at each of these individually.
No, I don't think we need to. I think within the area, as long as we can identify those, how do you disagree with taking non-habitat out of core on the edges? Does anybody have a problem with that?
All right, go ahead and look at my Platte Valley. There's several over here, just so you have a perspective of what's, you know, it's these kind of edge trimmings. Or in some cases, minor additions, but it cuts both ways. But definitely we're bringing anything to your awareness that somebody had said, no, don't do that, or made comment on.
Any objection to those? Okay.
Okay.
This is where you want to end up?
Yeah, this is fine. We'll go here. I-80 Creston Junction is right here. Rollins would be just off of the map, Atlantic Rim. So I-80 Railroad Power Line Corridor is the crosshatch, the executive order power line corridor. Here is disturbance. So there was a proposal that came in from Anadarko to trim some off the west edge here. The local working group looked at the, go ahead and leave that back on. Local working group got more aggressive with that, looking at this disturbance data and everything that's going on in here, and said it doesn't make a lot of sense for the greater South Pass core area to cross I-80 through that corridor. So they trimmed this back to here. The hope on the group was, knowing that there were some Anadarko proposals out there to remove core, that there might be a possibility of tying things together over here. There was a proposal here from Rollins BLM, as I believe, to add this polygon to connect. At the local working group, when they made this line that excluded this, they removed part of that to edge match, and also looked at this disturbance in here and said, okay, let's look at this corridor here. There was not consensus reached. That is what they ended up looking at in terms of potential add. They rejected these purples, and this was non-consensus. And since Anadarko was asked to look at this, they did. They said, no, we still have interest in this area. It is part of the EIS that was up there earlier, starts all the way down Bags, goes up here. This is still on the table for development. I think that's it.
Concerns that were expressed in that, there are two. One is if you leave this island out here, you are completely changing the context of the areas. So how does, again, back to Lori's very fair question, are you going to treat it, is there a level playing field? How do you leave it? What is it? That's 25,000 acres?
That's bigger.
Yeah.
50? I can't remember. You told us before.
It's a number, I can't remember, yeah, it's 50, I thought it was 50, I think.
With over 200 birds.
50,000.
We've argued connectivity, we've argued genetic transfer, we've argued all those things, and then you come out here and put a 55,000 acre core area in and say, well, because of this, all that goes out the window. That's, I'm just paraphrasing the conversation. So I think what was being said is it needs to go either south or north. Nobody seems to have a notion of that, Tom. And did you guys discuss how do you connect it?
Well, yeah, that was, the hope was to connect across here. Okay. That was the hope, but Anadarko says they still have interest in there. So the same reason that the gap existed before still exists now. And what we didn't report was the Sgit mapping group, and this is multiple proposals.
Okay. Okay, so 11E was unanimous to not put that in based on what Tom's just mentioned. And then we have, what's the purple down there?
11.
It said 26.
11, I think 11E is the purple and 28G.
Oh, yeah.
So
11E is
11E is the bigger one underneath. Okay, and then 20, it's 26G.
Yeah, 26G.
26G, I said, was also unanimous to not add. So that gets the middle.
11B and C. 11B, C, and D, actually.
Right. And we treated those all together, and it was unanimous to remove.
So
What would the percent disturbance be in? That's
In this stuff,
A lot. I mean, I don't have like percent disturbance worked out for each chunk of
I
wood.
don't know that has it been digitized? No, Nicholas, an approximate disturbance? No. Okay.
Other thoughts?
Does it exceed 5%?
The area in 2 quarters.
Oh, which area are you talking about, Joe? I assumed you were talking about
Well,
this.
I'm just assuming that if you leave 50,000 acres out there, that looks like more than 5% to me right now, and that's 50,000. So, and I don't know, but
I don't think it's over 5% out here, is it?
Some of those walls come out a little bit into there, and there's some, the bulk of that disturbance is on the west end there. That's around 10 to 15% to disruption for 640 plus.
Okay. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, just, when you look at forget the mapping exercise and look at the biology, trying to do the connectivity, those birds probably are moving north to south. They're moving east to west like everything does down there.
So, it makes sense to me to hold the corridor out there, because those are, while they may be in that core area, they're really birds that are connected biologically to those that are coming across that other core. So I'm sitting here and there's a little bit of a conundrum. So, are we just going to do paper core areas, or are we going to actually connect population? And like I said, I think it's well within reason to pull that whole corridor out, and even that stuff, that 11D. I mean, it's a gas field out there. Those make perfect sense to me. But to try to connect that population on the south end to the north end, biologically, they're not doing that. They're going east to west across that blue area. To me, that's what we're going to have to come to grips with. Are we going to do paper connections, or are we going to do biological connections? But
go ahead, John. If we're going and most of that they're traveling across, or probably traveling across the most disturbed part of that country, they're probably going more diagonal down into those uplands as they transfer across. I guess I kind of see this like we did up in the northeast deal, that's close enough that they can fly over and still not mess with Anadarko's rights.
Or is there a possible solution to do what GRMR did down on the south end? And have, is Anadarko, would they be willing to do something similar for that parcel up there?
Nick, you still here?
I'm still here. I'm not sure we have the same opportunity up here.
This is gas, right?
I think we're looking at both out here. This is a historically productive energy field with multiple horizons that we're targeting. We have an existing EIS. The reason this was left out in the first place was because of those boundaries. We've approached this process very thoughtfully in Anadarko. I think at least at this point, our stance is we'd like to see this remain out for.
And going back to when the local working group drew those lines and Anadarko gave up that stuff on the east side there to go ahead and pull in those larger lecks back then as a compromise back 5 years ago.
Well, I echo the statements. We wrestled through this years and years and years ago. They're getting back and forth. I certainly can't support including a majority of the north half of that EIS boundary that was carved out in the first place because of the level of development and turning it into. Doesn't make sense.
So what is your recommendation?
For all of this stuff?
Well, you'd be creating a new core area. 55,000 acre core area, given the recommendation before you.
There are smaller cores in the state.
we're talking about what, 200 birds?
One of the things that I've thought about in these areas like this, where we get challenged, deeper challenges on this, we lack zones where we can actually study the impacts of these things as they develop. And I think this may be worthy of maintaining for the purposes of seeing when it reaches critical mass on development around it, rather than abandoning it, literally using it as a study.
As an independent core.
Yep.
No, I think no change.
I'm saying no change.
I'm saying no change. Leave it like it is, because we can actually look at, I think it's worthy of study to see when we surround them like this, when do we begin to reach some of these thresholds that we talk about? And I think it's an experimental zone, if you will. I agree with Larry. I think these birds are moving across that blue area more than likely and that's how they're making connection. And if that's not available, I think that the study of the demise of this, if you will, is worth our effort.
The only rebuttal we had the last time we brought it up at our meeting, Brian, was, and I can't remember who said it, was
Not big enough.
wasn't I, well, is that we have the opportunity to do that elsewhere already to the east. Who was it that brought that up? It was just kind of a,
I think we're actually looking at, seats could be at that point,
Yeah, we were.
and saying this was the place to the east that we could look at. Doing
This is actually the one they told me to go to Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't know that they aren't both worth our review, because these are the challenges that we're constantly trying to measure the thresholds and have few opportunities to actually determine.
thank you, Brian.
So let me throw out a couple options that I think I see. The 11D that Nissa has there that she showed was completely a gas field, as Larry called it. I didn't hear any disagreement that that probably should come out. Correct?
Well, there is a discussion of the disturbance percentage. And if you take that out, you're actually lowering the disturbance percentage in the remaining core.
So activity at the edge would potentially show less disturbance. The stuff on
So
the
then you
east.
can do more disturbance in that small one core.
Okay. Yeah. What?
How many birds just due west of the 11D label?
7,
11D label.
36.
Not that one underneath.
36.
Yeah. 36.
Okay, well, it doesn't sound like there's agreement on that either.
I would leave it as is. It's my proposal, we leave it as
You
is.
have two options, leave it as is or create that as a separate core. What's your preference, guys?
I'd just tell you, I think we just need to leave it as is.
Like that.
I agree.
Okay.
It's the golden rule at work.
Yeah, that is. All right, next.
Hold on, I gotta make some notes. So none of these are good.
I got it.
Okay, well,
Yeah, we need it for methods.
Right here.
Yeah.
Here, let me that computer, I'll just put it right in there. I got my battery on, I can go all night.
okay. So,
I don't think we have anything else south of the interstate.
I am not sure.
I don't think there was. Okay, moving north, this is gonna be the Bear Oil country. I went and put the chapter 33s on this, what this is based on primarily. Proposal from the local biologist to connect these areas in some manner, either through internal connectivity, which I understand you've now defined, those of you working on that issue, or core. This would connect two core areas, Hannah, Greater South Pass. There was a comment received from UR Energy, that area, that's out of here now. Where did he say?
It's out.
Yeah, it's out, isn't
It's
it?
been
Okay.
drawn.
Yeah, they had a permit in here. No, this is it.
It's got strong enough.
No, it's, well, actually, it's not that one, it's long and 70.
Is that a federal unit?
No, it's a mine.
They did send it to me and it is out. I have to find it, but it's out. Is this the one that had the oil gas?
One at a time.
Penny, what?
There was one blue edition that had one gas unit in it.
No, this is this.
Okay,
These are all
it's
these.
not this one.
I don't think it's in here, but I do have it. They cut it out.
Okay, the intent by everyone involved was, because that was drawn out specifically in 2010. The idea was they shouldn't have to ask twice. So a local working group, it wasn't a non-consensus thing so much as, well, we don't know if we can do this in terms of connectivity. There's no definitions that applies to this, because connectivity only applies by
by the existing executor in Northeast Wyoming. So it was a kick it up decision and see, show me data, see what they think about this. So that,
Okay, how do you want to handle it?
and what was the working or the Sgit?
It was unanimous to add that, excluding the uranium.
Excluding this.
As core.
As
Yeah,
core.
as core.
So now it's gonna connectivity with
As core.
his core.
Thoughts?
Tom, excluding what?
Excluding the mine permit, yeah, this go ahead.
I have to sign it, but I did exclude it.
I'll just put the boundary on there again that you had earlier.
I don't think it's.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
that one.
It's cut out already.
Yeah, it's not that one.
Where it cuts north, I think it sits right in there.
No, no, it'd be on
Those
here.
are federal units.
Yeah, no, it's this guy, and we just went off the northeast corner and straight north. Those were the unit cuts.
Yeah,
So
it was,
just
it was
goes
something,
up that
it was
line.
like this. There's a bunch, if you look at the observation, there's a bunch of birds, they didn't want to lop it here because there's a lot of use right in here.
Oh,
So-
actually, hold on. I know where it's at.
You found it.
This is when you have 3 different files.
There it is. So that's where that unit is. And put those bird observations back on and the units and the wells and, well, yeah, there you go.
But I don't know. It can't all be.
Yeah.
With the birds.
Yeah, those are radio colored birds, GPS colors. The blue and the red and the orange.
Yellow's bright.
The yellow,
So this is birds.
What are your thoughts?
We have to add so much on the south end.
you get to decide.
Well,
Recommendation from the subgroup is to add the blue as core. Paul?
Well, I'm okay with that. I certainly think it needs to be clipped to that federal unit.
On the west side there where it looks like it's not.
You go, no, well, there and then Tom, right there.
Okay, with the cleanup on that, then I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads.
Yeah, for both of those federal units, just for the record.
Okay. What else?
Okay, this is writing, so as soon as she's ready, we'll move. The next polygon you see on the map are going to be some of these edge things along the Ferris, toes of the Ferris Mountains and things like that. So you've already decided we're accepting those, so we'll just scan across them, these things. Yep. You see red, it's removed. Blue, red.
do you want to go in?
We're still doing, are we out of South Central? I think we are South Central.
Just, yeah.
Yes, we're done.
Y'all, okay? Do the upper green next, please.
Upper Green. Pinedale. So here's Pinedale in the center. This is the sublets, we've already county line down here. Big Sandy River perspective. You have some more Forest Service liability proposals in here. All these, is it 5B? Yes. All these 5B proposals are Forest Service viability proposals. This one recommended for connectivity. We'll zoom in here in just a second. The others as core. Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the upper green. Green River Lakes. Green itself.
The
This-
electrical.
Okay, that right up here is the Jackson, or that Groban core area that you just approved. This is, the idea here is that there are birds using this country. We've got some telemetry going on up here. The thought being that there is some connectivity. They have not demonstrated that with actual birds. There's some bit of genetic evidence that suggests a one-way movement at some point. This is the path of the pronghorn, probably familiar with, migrating out of Teton. That's the basic rationale. This does not, because this is cut off from the Forest Service boundary, this does not join down here. If you were to actually accept this, it would be logical to connect this. Forest Service did not propose that. It's not on their land. Let's put the check 30 on there. This one is fairly controversial, and maybe not actually. In the local working group and in the local community up there, there is not for doing this. So this was a non-consensus from the local working group.
Yeah, who was it this?
There is no Forest Service representative on this local working group, so I think this was actually consensus not to add. And from the Sgit mapping group?
I have unanimous not.
5B, the larger polygon.
This is the north.
Or not this.
Yeah, I'm showing the north.
Unanimous, no, do not.
Okay, so you have unanimous no. Recommendation is not to add to core.
Some of that was just, it's preliminary. We don't know enough about it.
Okay, objection to that recommendation?
So what was the recommendation?
Not to add to core.
Okay, yeah.
Would you like to state your objection?
No, I'm on board.
Good, because I was about to kick your ass.
The notes so reflect. Okay, we'll go this way. We'll hit all these Forest Service ones and then we'll come back to the center. We'll just talk about all three of these. Adjacent to existing core, some fairly marginal habitat in some of this, timber in some of this. Again, the working group was actually in consensus not to add, and I believe it was majority, or well, what was the vote on this?
It was unanimous.
Unanimous not to add these. The thoughts on the local working group was this is adding acres with no birds. But the WAS points out it's a bird use.
Recommendation is not to add. If you vote, if you nod yes, you're saying no. This is just like the Senate, isn't it?
Say no.
This is just like the Senate. Any objection to that recommendation? Okay.
Okay, moving across.
I think at some point we're gonna have to find Dennis Palmer.
Dennis is feeling good because he at least got one vote.
I need a vote.
Okay, we're on
joining me there. Last one.
We're on the other side of the Green River, this is Wyoming Range over here, Cottonwood Creek. Proposal here to add 2 sagebrush meadows that go up into form.
We have.
I thought the local do something. They chose not to. This is a county road along here. That's what draws those observations.
We did that.
Yeah, other,
It's probably on your other.
I've got like 10 files somewhere. I can find the file that's it, but yeah, that is buffering.
What's that?
That we ended up buffering that.
Oh,
that
6
lek.
tenths or more.
We did 2 mile.
2 miles, 2 miles.
Okay, within the Sgit mapping group, we added some.
Okay, so let's do this in 2 pieces. The first is the Forest Service recommendation to add the pair of gloves over there. And the recommendation is no from both the local and the subgroup.
Correct.
Any objection to that recommendation? Now, the second recommendation from the mapping group was to further buffer. There you go, the 2 miles to provide adequate buffering for that leg. And that's the recommendation from them. And I assume that was unanimous as well.
There's the old one. You can see the faint green line.
So it would be to add that small parcel to buffer that leg to 2 miles. Any objection to that? Okay, next.
Can I ask a question, Paul?
Yes, sir.
I'm pretty sure between the cottonwoods there isn't, but if you throw up your well layer, you might see something, but I think it's below that. I think it's
It's below.
Right
Okay, next.
Okay, we're going to the flanks of the anticline. Proposal from industry to remove these 2 polygons that are on the flanks of the mesa. This Papa EIS boundary. Within the working group, there was not consensus, but majority not to do that. And within the Sgit group, it was
9-1 to not take those two. In other words, to leave it as it is.
That would be the same vote as the local working group.
So the recommendation would be to leave it as it is. Correct? Correct. Leave it as it is. Any objection? Okay.
Nobody's heard about this area.
Is that Bart Simpson? Oh, you got to make it for now. You not. Or as we call him, Bart Summers.
No, Bart Ulrich.
There it is. Got the same hairdo.
Okay, so
God, that is.
So this is the proposal you've been hearing and reading about from the Pinedale Beyond Game and Fish folks. They submitted an area, basically, okay, look at this area, consider for core primary, based on 2 things. The winter habitat that we've all talked about for, I won't belabor that. Also, some of these, the density map changed color over this last period. You now have some red showing up in here where you didn't before. So there are some legs. But it is the NPL. So I'm not going to go into any more detail. The vote, consensus of the local working group -1, so not consensus, with obviously industry not supporting that being core or something in there being core. And within the working group,
it was 6-4 to add, but acknowledging that we do have other EIS process, et cetera, is going on in there, but 6-4 to add.
So
Can you add the lease layer?
It's going to turn black.
Yeah, I don't have leases, like you mentioned, well.
Almost all of that acreage is leased and has been leased for quite some time. We've also had this in an EIS boundary and study since 2011, based largely on our acquisition almost a year ago on the fact that this was not. That's correct.
And this was one that we made the recommendation that BLM and
Yeah.
Well, let me share this one thing. We spent quite a bit of time this morning on winter concentration. This is the winter concentration. I have a bit of a concern that if you throw it out there and say, okay, this is now into a core area, we will not adequately address the winter concentration. And with what Larry just showed us down in the south part of the state, are we taking away an opportunity to do the right thing for those winter areas by just saying, okay, we'll just call it core? Now, that's rhetorical, I'm not, but you clearly don't have a overwhelming guidance to go one way or the other on this one. Thoughts, Larry?
Well, just my thoughts on this, and I share your concerns, because I think when we get down to it, throwing core area over winter concentrations, it's kind of like mixing apples and oranges. Maybe very seasonal differences. We're not talking about legs. You know, nesting habitat that's right in the core area. We don't know how far these birds will fly over. A lot of these discussions. So I'm a little reluctant just to throw it in and call it core when it may be a whole other range of issues and alternatives that we can do versus what's specified in the core strategy. So I think it deserves a little more independent look on the whole wintering concentration area. They come up with a whole different set of recommendations than just slapping core into that. So
What are the colors?
Hold on a second. This is like,
So there, I'll start explaining that. You had the initial stuff that local folks did for winter, and then you asked TWS to look at the issue. They essentially validated slightly, you know, they're both polygons overlay each other. So right now, and the color differences are just what's in the NPL, what's in the pop-up is green, NPL is orange, blue is outside. That's all those colors mean right now. Now,
Tom, I think there was an important color beforehand that you mentioned briefly, and that's the densities that have started to occur there.
okay, but let's put the middle spot. That's trying to get here, I think.
here we go.
Okay, so those light blue areas are the TWS. Yeah, so they overlay it. You know, it pretty nicely validated the local folks' areas of concern. So to Brian's question with the density.
I mean, I'm a firm believer that we're going to find a way to protect this for winter range, but I also think that we don't want to dismiss out of hand the core suggestion, just looking at the density of birds that's in there now, liking, et cetera. So I want to make the point that the local working group was looking at what's happened out there, not just at protecting it for winter, but the increase in population that they've seen.
So, just a point of conversation, with respect to the lands that have been leased, and while you're saying majority, if not all that land has been leased. So if this actually did get moved into core, those leases that you have wouldn't have to abide by core because they would get grandfathered in. Is that correct?
Not based on our current executive board. Not just leases.
They're not paid.
Correct, because we have had an ongoing EIS process since 2002.
John,
I kind of going to agree with the senator from Bags on this one. Well, but being that there's the IS and the winter deal, you know, how
you know, if you did what truly is showing up on bright colors as core, you wouldn't be picking up the winter there. I would rather fall back on the EIS and start looking at using this to develop our winter protocols, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Well, just to clarify, I think the local working group and us were asked to consider it for core. If there was no winter concentration area, that's a
Right.
We didn't have an option.
Okay, other thoughts?
I think when it comes to the birds, it looks like it should be core, but when you consider the EIS process and the commitment and acquisitions that PL or Jonah Energy have put into it, and that's more of a, we're having to make a decision based on all of that information. And so it becomes more challenging.
It would be very inconsistent. And then do something different here as well.
So remind me, what was the wrong?
The Anadarko area.
Oh, right, okay. Because we didn't create it there.
They have a development that's moving forward in an EIS, in an area that's been evaluated, so.
And we maintain core, just left it as is down there.
Not in core. You ready to move on? I'm not seeing a unanimous or highly. Okay. Okay, we're done in the upper green. We'll just stay right here. This poaches onto the upper green side, but the proposal is basically out of the Southwest local PLM office. Again, based on. So are we going to go from here to Southwest?
Oh, yeah, I thought, yeah.
Okay, so just schedule-wise, this will be the last one we're going to do today. We're going to do half of them today. We'll do the others at the next meeting. I think we've gone through plenty without trying to beat everybody in the ground. So we'll do Southwest and then we'll call it a day. Okay.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So is the decision to defer on NPL for the next meeting, or what is the?
To leave it as is.
To leave it as is.
Which is under the
Acknowledge winter concentration.
So winter concentration, well, we did that.
So we've done that. I mean, but that's all part of that.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so here's where we're at. Farson sits here, county line again. Proposal from the Rock Springs BLM based on density map. And when this started, this was connected to what Pinedale folks were looking at. Obviously, it's no longer connected to that. This is existing core. Consensus within the local working group. There was concern about, okay, what's going on there lease-wise, oil and gas-wise. Leaseholder, there have been, the oil and gas rep on the local working group contacted leaseholders. There has been no comment on that. So with that, the local working group was in consensus to add, and our group was
consensus to add, and we did make a slight modification there to take that one well unit out of the core.
Recommendation is to add the Farson area, and it was unanimous vote, correct?
Yes.
Objection. Okay.
Moving to the southwest, Fontenelle Reservoir. This polygon is based on new LEC data. This was originally proposed in 2010 by the local folks. They were just finding these LECs during the actual process. We said, no, you haven't crossed the threshold of validating your LECs yet. They've done a pretty good job of that. In the meantime, Yeah, there's not with the oil and gas stuff on here. There's not much going on here conflict wise. There is a unit within. Chair of the local working group lives Fontenelle Creek, wherever that, yeah, right here.
Who owns that unit?
I'm sorry?
Who owns that unit?
They did discuss this unit in the local working group.
It's
Lots of
dry hole.
dry holes.
Yeah, and this was the same, the oil and gas person said, okay, as long as we don't get pushback. And there's been no comments received on that.
Didn't you say that filed is about county commission?
Well, we've received some input from Lincoln County. They were primarily concerned with the area we're going to next. In general, they didn't like the idea of adding more court to their county. This is a general rule, but there was not specific reasons for the, in terms of the core area criteria that were provided, why this would not meet those criteria.
So what is the recommendation?
The recommendation from both groups was unanimous.
Unanimous to add. So unanimous to add. Any dissent, discussion on that?
What's the reason for the big spurs on the north and the east?
This was drawn by the folks on the ground. Mark Stratnick was one of the guys. These birds are going up here for nesting in summer. There's more birds here in August, September, and October than down here. So there's definitely a elevational movement in there.
That'd be that ridge on south of Mark.
Yeah, this is the large grid. And here, I'm not sure what the buffer is, but if you buffer that black where it goes out, they were just looking at habitat in here, I believe. Yeah, I don't recall their, I'm sure it was just, this is good sagebrush habitat. I think that's as far as that went.
Can we check that? Can you check that between now and the next meeting?
Yeah, put observations up there. I'm sure that's all it was, but
Nothing there.
I thought they had said something about usage in the riparian areas for that spot, but I could be wrong.
there's no documentation.
Let's just be able to answer that question at the next meeting. I mean, I didn't hear any objection, but it would be, if you don't have you don't have birds and, you know, there's, just to add acres here is not the purpose of this. So let's make sure that's right.
Okay, this is places, here's power line corridor. Okay, this proposal, this is Cokeville Meadows, Bear River, town of Cokeville up here. The original proposal from the local working group was across here. And all of this, yeah, there it is. All of this, based on the county's comments, the Sgit mapping group said it made sense to do this. The county actually proposed a connectivity area across the refuge. We said that really isn't necessary because what we're connecting to is what we were asked to do a few years ago by Utah.
Well, it's way narrow, we figured they were way over there anyway.
I'm sorry?
We also had to measure that, and it's such a small distance, we figured there was probably something.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly flight distance across that. You know, there is some grouse use in there in the summer. Now, one of the things that the Southwest group did meet the other day, day before yesterday, as you requested, they looked at some of these other areas as well. They said, don't add this. This lek is actually, it's the edge of the airport strip over here. And they said, cut it off, where we said, don't go up and grab that fiber. So
just move those to Jackson. We know how to handle those. Okay, so the recommendation is to do the green only.
Well, technically, our Sgit mapping group recommended the blue addition. The Southwest group said, no, that light is in the wrong place. It's on the edge of the airport. There's no reason to add that. And this is, yeah.
Okay, that's information after you had made your decision.
Yes.
So are you guys agreeable to that, to the green? That's, I think the recommendation is the green.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you all know, that is rather important to us and the service to be able to show that we are recognizing Utah and Idaho. That's what they want. Literature states, and probably those are the best birds that Utah has, that it probably is important.
And that like was new, that 32 bird like newly discovered, rediscovered, whatever. That turned that area red too, where it wasn't before.
Okay.
Okay. No, did you decide, or we're ready to move on?
We're good.
Okay. Okay, going here, here's the town of Kimmer. This is the Hams Fork, Highway 30. This is another fairly complex set of proposals. Anadarko came in with a proposal to remove this eastern edge of core based on their intent to start an EIS, or there's an EIS start or something along those lines that they would like to develop, looking at observations on. They felt that a 2-mile buffer on these lakes was sufficient. The habitat down here, there's some observations. Go ahead and put the chapter 33 up there too. There's been some research birds in here from Utah State Raven study. The working group, based on these observations and lake buffers, they did not want to remove all of it. They were in agreement that, okay, we can live with this, and there was consensus to do that. There was consensus not to remove this. And you need both of these polygons, or are they? Then the working group did not agree. They said, okay, we want to capture some of the brood-bearing habitat up here along the Hams Fork. Basically, in exchange for down here, it would be a better deal. So they couldn't agree on this line or this line. And I think there was just 1 or 2 holdouts on this. It wasn't a big deal, but we weren't going to spend any more time on it. So from the Sgit mapping group perspective, it was
8 to 2 with a large, yeah, for which drop out, put in. Oh, for the overall proposal was 8 to 2 to support what the local working group proposed. Yeah, and with the, we said we're going to do the bigger area. They had said that they didn't know whether they're going to do the bigger or the smaller. So we did the bigger area, we add there, remove here. So what you see here is what the Sgit subgroup supported, 8 to 2. 8 to 2.
Okay, thoughts?
Just,
Paul, go ahead.
no, just to, and maybe the local working group got into this, Tom. Looking at this, that's cutting into the town of Opal, or at least a handful, as I know of.
The blue is.
The blue is.
Yeah.
Yeah, up north. I certainly want to make sure you clipped out.
Yeah, they didn't zoom in that close, so that's.
I think that would be well worth the effort, and certainly energy of heavy industrial activity that's happening right there.
Zoom in real close.
No, it cuts out. There's Opal. It cuts out Opal.
Barely.
It's on the river.
us to see a fact check further west to see if anything else is there that would now be considered core.
This is core right here.
You mean further east or you mean further west?
Just along that northern proposed border.
Oh.
Is that the railroad tracks that run south of the highway there?
Yep. So they didn't exclude that. Yep. There's the railroad. Of course, when you go further west, I don't think it was excluded before either.
Thoughts?
I just express, I'm probably one of the two here. I want to express some concern on 2 miles is good enough. You know, we developed these clearances on Lex and radii that are based on science. And, you know, we're just going, oh, well, that sounds good. I'd really like to know more about the habitat, but it is 10-2. I understand that. I just would want to raise that caution.
All right, let me walk through this again. Any objection to the recommendation to take the bottom part off, the few bird observations? Here's the habitat is somewhat mixed, and it was unanimous from both groups not to accept that as a deletion. Anyone object to that?
Just one clarification, it wasn't unanimous, it was 8-2
Yeah.
on that bottom, that removal.
On just the question of
Just
taking
the
it off.
question, taking it out.
Okay, and that's, Brian, your concern that you don't think there's adequate buffer. Okay. So, full group, your thoughts, given that that's what the recommendation to you is?
There's an EIS underway, or
There's not a decision.
There's any.
Nate, what's that for the
This is going to be part of our Lax Fork EIS, which we've just started into discussions with BLM, so it's not like this has gone to scoping or anything like that. It takes in a large portion of this core area. This falls within the checkerboard, obviously. And whenever we approach this, we drew a buffer around those Lex and just took a small piece of that you see right there.
So could you look at what that buffer, is that the 2 mile there for sure on, that one and then the ones.
29 going back down.
And then 29 down at the bottom is going to be 2 as well.
72 and then 4.
Okay, going to be 2 and 4.
Okay, so on the bottom,
Because I'm not seeing any compelling evidence to change it at all in this one, the bottom or the top.
we've got a bottom, middle, and top, correct? There's 3 proposals there. Am I missing something, Tom?
No.
I was at the meeting, and there was a really interesting comment that there was a lot of local experience with that top section, and they felt that it would be a very good exchange based on what they call that top area. The type of topography there.
Oh, riparians, and actually the wildlife manager for the Green River District lives in Ocala. This is his backyard. And so that was his recommendation to put this in.
When this was brought up by Anadarko, he was lobbying very hard to add this to take out that south area.
As a reasonable slope.
He thought it was more than reasonable. He kept trying to grow that top area.
Right, sticking with the no net loss sideboard that we were given.
Well, it don't have loss of life. No Lex there.
He spoke about it, you're right. He did not speak of lines.
It all looks to me like an acre for acre deal. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, if you guys want to do that, that's fine, but there's nothing you're swapping for. So really the question I think is, does that bottom piece, is that something that you're okay to remove? You want to leave it as it is? The existing core NISA would be everything that's in the line except the blue, correct?
Yeah, you're having to turn this all off. That's what core looks like right now. Okay.
Well, who was it that just said, John, are you seeing a compelling reason to alter this core area, would be my question.
I said it.
Yeah.
I'm not, I guess I don't see a compelling reason. And the part of the reason why why it was asked to be changed is we might do something there. It's not something in the works right now. Is my understanding.
Okay.
Does the riparian habitat offer any additional habitat value over the southern area? Or?
Yeah, the local working group thought that this was a reasonable, I mean, they wouldn't consider it if they did. They thought that was a good trigger for this or that. They weren't willing to give up. Yeah, so the buffer.
Back up there.
Yeah, it looks like they're using riparian. And the local working group was the smaller subset to the north of the blue.
Well, they were split in the local working group where to draw that line.
So the recommendation from our group is to take the bottom off and add the top, the remainder. So you're cutting that out of core and putting the other one on top. Correct.
I guess I have a concern with how consistently we're applying our logic. So with MPL, they have something that is in the process right now. With this, it's not. And we're saying, sure, you can come out. Are we doing everything the same across the board is my question to the group. And I don't know that we need to be, but I think that should be recognized if we're not.
And I guess after having sat through both discussions would be at this point and looking at that and saying, well, yeah, that's a good point. What is the compelling reason to treat it differently? And the answer to that one is, I don't really see one. From looking at it from this perspective, and then we go back to what Brian said, we would be looking at it from the standpoint of we've got a 4 mile buffer right now, but that's what we're giving up in exchange for something up there on top from a riparian, from a pure habitat standpoint. From the local working group's perspective, it made sense, but when you look at the sense of the buffering and whether we've got additional compelling information, I guess I would be saying at this point, let's just leave it alone.
I have to say too, I think that training anything for riparian, we've not gone into how do we do one's late summer blueberry? Are we mapping all the alfalfa meadows that are used and saying those are core because they use them?
No, but in 2010 you said we're going to map. We're going to include important seasonal habitats. We went up to the edge of
I agree with that. Now we're making a swap of the buffer.
Yeah.
To protect the big lead.
Yeah.
For a piece of riparian habitat which actually belongs in a different mapping exercise. That's
what I'm hearing is a whole lot of, I can't find a reason to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. Leave it as is. Okay. And I can't, Tom, I think one other thing, the OPAL piece is almost a mirror of what we ended up with Fontenelle last time. We know there's birds, we think they're there, we haven't documented it completely, we don't know exactly. And we said to them, get us the data. That data led to a change. There's nothing to say that couldn't do that here, but I don't know that I'm not sensing that everybody's got a comfort level with it.
CSP, I guess. So, this is the area that the local working group said does not meet the criteria for core. Recommend removal. You asked them to validate that or reconsider, whatever you want to call it. They did that the day before yesterday. They spent at least 2 hours on this. Their numbers changed slightly, but the overall recommendation did not. was 8-2 to continue to recommend removal of the core. Two primary reasons. Existing disturbance, well, 3. Existing disturbance, the CCAA that is underway in that area, in a larger area that actually encompasses 22 Lex across a larger landscape. And the fact that in this, for those of you that have been here a while, this was actually connected to the south before. This was trimmed back as a result of the trona mines in here. At the time, this trona mine was mothballed, inactive. I don't know what the correct terminology is, but
Washed up?
Well, not anymore.
Either.
And I'll rely on you to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. The power line corridor came in after the fact of that corridor being drawn. That wasn't part of the discussion when this line was drawn, this core area created. The two folks that said, yeah, let's reconsider this, said the birds are doing okay in there. We've seen some increases. Let's let the scenario play out with the power line and see what happens, essentially. So that's a 2-hour discussion condensed into 2 minutes.
And then your group, was there same representation on the local working group?
Yeah.
Basically good representation from all stakeholders.
Yep. Thoughts? The recommendation then from your group was also to.
It was 9-1 to leave it as it is.
So opposite.
Okay.
So
your local working group overwhelmingly take it out, your subgroup overwhelmingly leave it in. Thoughts? Go ahead, Mark.
Two points that come off the top of my head is the first one is wholesaling, removing core areas is probably going to throw up a red flag. May not mean anything, it's just something that we're going to have to look at closely. Secondly, changing a core area for a CCAA regulatorily is not an even deal.
Okay. Other thoughts?
What was the subgroup recommendation?
Leave it as is.
leave it as is.
And Bob, the last time they were here, you had asked like the proposals that would be on this core if it was left in, and we do have some of those to look at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of shape files flying back and forth the other day. There's some potentials to add and things like that, but
Well, yeah, let me clarify what I asked the local group to do. I said, okay, I think you had a conversation that said in or out. I didn't feel like, given the description, there was any discussion of, yeah, you know, the power line corridor and all the disturbance up north doesn't really fit, but we could maybe go out to the east or west, or we could go here, or we could do this. I didn't feel comfortable that that discussion was had.
Yeah,
So I asked for that to happen.
yeah, and they did, and I didn't include that. So a couple things. First, this totally new to me. I didn't realize there was this big job to get around Sgit here. I always assumed that, you know, there was more of a direct line here. So your actual impact of that forward wider than it appears. That's going around Sgit. Here are the potential tweaks to the core here. There was also a thought of including the river of the Sachin, Sgit, in a core area and connecting up here. Still have a power line corridor going across there. So those things were talked about. Okay.
The other thing, and I was at that first meeting, when you look down at where that buffer zone not drawn in there yet, but when it does, it's going to further chop that up. So we've been, we are moving down the road with CCA. We've now gotten all the other phone industry producers on the team. So, and we're not saying that's the reason why it should come out. We didn't even propose it, but what we're struggling with
when you look at the area that we lost, and we're here 65 years, we're going to be here another 200 years. We're worried about the future, not 5 years or 10 years from now. And so we're struggling to find area around the outside of that core that we can add in.
It may not exist.
That's our.
And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I just wanted to be sure that conversation was had.
But this hasn't been marked yet. It's going to be further reduced. That's our issue. Is as you know, we're doing underground wiring, we're doing solar panel, we're doing everything we can. We need to responsibly, but that area is getting smaller and smaller, and we're struggling to find areas outside.
What's your pleasure?
Can we have some little bit of discussion about what's best for the bird, regardless of the core area? Whatever the stakeholders are doing as part of their CCAA. It was mentioned that CCAA is not a direct trade for the core area, but if whatever goes into a CCAA goes above and beyond core areas, does that make a difference? I think that's what's really at the end of the day, what's going to work best for that particular local population.
But I guess just a comment there, London. I mean, we've got, or we'll have, we hope here shortly, a combination CCA that will cover 5 counties in northeast Wyoming, and there's no suggestion on our part to say that's going to impact what core is. They're really, they're not comparable trades from my perspective either. Two very different things to look at. I guess my thought there on the corridor there is there's no need. I mean, the reason for the corridor was putting it across core. It's outside of core, so there is technically no corridor there because the transmission line is outside of core. So we're not really impacting core there. Now, granted, that may impact. There may be an impact on the birds, but we don't have to. We're not going to be doing anything there to shrink core on that side.
You have to have a buffer zone, and when you add the power,
because it's
in the core,
it's outside of core.
So any buffers or anything would be determined by BLM and private landowners based on negotiation. All right. But will impact the EBCT. EBCT was what I'm worried about. Outside.
It's outside of core.
Oh, as part of that, when I mentioned the connection across here, that would, I
that
think
would
they were
bring
talking
it,
about
okay.
cutting off some of the south. And Julie, is that right?
Right.
We're trying to capture a couple of these bigger lights that don't have much disturbance around them. Getting rid of disturbance, but you still have power line corridors.
I would suggest that we listen to what Mr. Saddleberg has to say. Do you really want to take the core area out and say we're trading it for a CCAA? I don't know. Julie?
Yeah, and the discussion wasn't so much of a one-to-one trade for the CCAA. It was a vote of confidence by the agency people in the county saying that the work that we've been doing for 3 years in that area, we're doing on the ground because of our CCAA and to show intent with the service in BLM. In fact, the service in BLM were on our site last week. Again, so those are active negotiations. We haven't done work on the ground for the DDCT. It's all been voluntary work for the CCAA. So that's what they were acknowledging with the CCAA.
Yeah.
Not that it was a one-to-one trade so much. But that's a valid point of Mark's, obviously, but I did want to clarify that. And there were a couple more shapefiles in this that we looked at the local working group. One was the permitted permits. So the land use shapefile in that area. So it showed the boundaries of all the trauma mines and the EIS boundary for Matza Arch, which goes right down about the middle. And it showed the Questar gas field. It just gives you another example of what's permitted out there for disturbance, not just what's on the ground right now. And it was a 2-hour exhaustive discussion of what are the options, how can we add to that core, how can we remove that core, and there was nothing satisfactory. And the part of the conclusion was, this is truly a no net loss, that we have added a couple of hundred other birds in other core areas, and that these 90 birds in this core, it's not healthy habitat, they're not healthy leks, and that it's less than 0.5% of the core of the males captured in core for the whole state. It's less than 0.5% that are in this core area. And so we felt that we more than compensated for that loss by a couple of other 100 males that were captured in the additional core that we recommended. So it was more of a no net loss discussion.
You know, the big takeaway I got from the working review was that they basically said they got it wrong the first time. They said this just isn't core. This shouldn't be core. Let's make it right. Let's take this out. Okay, that's what we heard.
John?
I guess after what we did there, Reiner and West Rollins, I think consistency, I think we leave this one also.
Other thoughts?
Is the permit boundaries in there for those pre-2008?
That she finally isn't turned on yet.
Okay, yeah, which, I'm just saying,
Yeah, the Tronum mine in that core has been operating for 4 years. And that's one of the younger ones in the Tronum patch. I think it would have been called existing
disturbance?
Land uses.
So
What I'm not hearing is any compelling arguments here to alter what we have today.
But they would be basically grandfathered, right?
In the core, they already are.
That's what I mean, as far as.
So we're grandfathered until you seek the permit. And so we've already done 5 DDCTs in 3 years. Because anytime you seek to install a monitoring well, or just even recently, we had a well site permitted, we had to move it for cultural reasons because our disturbance was actually less than what we originally permitted. But because that change was a permit, that reduction in footprint had to go through a DDCT.
So is this the same, Mary Nicholas, is this the same thing as Oregon Basin? Because they were in there, you did the DDCT just to, but it wouldn't have an impact on the approval versus non-approval?
So part of the problem is that every time they get a read, it's not the same, it's different. With the permit, and they have to see if somebody else moved in and created a higher element. So that's what it does. It is apples and kangaroos.
Thank you. If I could touch on the grandfathering, because I know that it's discussed in this group a lot. So even if we never had to seek another permit and never stuck another shovel and moved a shovel full of dirt, our bond automatically goes up, the cost of our bond, because now we have new reclamation standards to meet in that core. So there are numerous costs associated with being in core, even if you're grandfathered. So now you have to meet new suitability standards for any future reclamation. The 140, the 640, and the 5%, you hit those. That's all part of the discussion.
What's your pleasure?
Again, we didn't go to the local work group even thinking about asking to take this out of the core. They brought it up when they looked at it, and they also said, again, knowing what they know today about core, it wouldn't have been in there to begin with. The issue that we have is, we're signing up for another 2 years, right? And the concern we have is we're already, with our mine plan, 20 years out at 4.6, 4.7% disturbance. You add that transmission piece in there and other things. That's my big, and that is with the proactive that we've committed to do it. We will continue. It's just something that's going to be more difficult as we go forward.
All right, you want to park it and come back?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I am not in any way comparing even to PCA. I just was kind of a question to Mark. This is a really difficult situation, I understand. And in no way would weird, you guys want to compromise, but isn't this similar to adaptive management where what you knew in 2010, you gathered more data and therefore, adding and subtracting kind of the whole process. And I know the search kind of, looks bad to remove completely, but if it wasn't evaluated correctly initially and they've gone through the exercises to figure that out, doesn't that fall within some of the, adaptive management ideas?
I think it does. I think what the point I was making though is if there's good justification for taking it out, then that's fine. It's just that if someone hears, Wyoming eliminated one of the core areas and that's all you hear, I'll be answering letters forever.
And I really fully respect that. It's a hard decision. I just throw that out there.
I just wonder if we have another criteria for our default. No change.
Well, I think that's where we are. However, what I am gonna do is I'm gonna park it. We're gonna come back to this on the 27th, give people time to think about it some more. If we can't come to agreement, which we certainly are not at any level of agreement now, if we can't, then it stays how it is. If we can, fine, but that gives people a chance to look at it, talk about it, think about it. We've asked the local people twice and they haven't changed their mind. So that's something we should weigh as well.
So wait, I have two comments. One, Julie, will you resend that one? Because I went through the emails and I don't have that.
Okay, I think I'm writing that down right now.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And then I had a thing for Bob. So when we come back and revisit this, these what I'm kind of turning on right now are the proposals that were received for this specific core area.
And let's do them all together.
Okay, so you want to look at those all?
Yeah, the whole thing is.
Just to clarify, the proposal that's on the far west side was originally an Anadarko proposal we took off the table.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't want to spend, we've got 2 or 3 more and we'll be done with the Southwest. I don't want to spend the whole time on this. Let's deal with it. We'll come back to it. You've done great today. I mean, we're halfway through the local working groups here. So, Tom, let's go to your last point and then we'll come back to this.
This one's, I guess Flaming Gorge is just a different kind of edge. It's water. Can we move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is one bird off right there.
I actually saw a bird flying over the Gorge.
That's when he was in a boat.
I was in an airplane counting out.
No, I did the bird.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is White Mountain.
Yeah, this is Rock Springs, White Mountain. There's a proposal from Wild Earth Guardians embedded in here. This is from a local working group member. Based on the observations along here and lek buffers. This was talked about adding last time in 2012, but because of some pending wind projects, 2 of them, one on this end of White Mountain, one on this end, those were not included in the core last time. Those wind projects no longer exist. So at the local working group, they were in consensus to add these areas, not clear out here, because this is kind of salt desert shrub country. Local working group met. Most of you have seen the letter from Rock Springs. Know this. They said as soon as this power line goes in here, just because these projects are dead, doesn't mean the wind is dead up here. They were at the meeting the other day before yesterday. The door was kind of open for that discussion. Rock Springs Raising just said, we've submitted our comments. So the working group did not pick it up again. And within our group, it was.
So we're talking about, do you want to talk about 11G?
11G is the blue.
11G.
11G was a 9-to-1 to add to core.
9-to-1 to add
the blue.
The blue. And this, I think, was probably unanimous.
Unanimous.
From both, not to add that piece. Correct.
Okay, so we're really only dealing with 11G.
Right.
The recommendation was to add.
Just to add. This is the rim of White Mountain. Well, actually, the rim is up here. They wanted to catch this like this in the flats. Off of the White Mountain.
Thoughts?
Telemetry data for this area?
Telemetry, no.
What's the density up there? I don't see a justification for adding it.
So wildlife observation system. Grass.
The reason that was considered before, in 2010, that was a much larger lek, and the density came out to here, and they just went to the, so, yeah, I checked the data on that. That's the reason it was proposed in 2010, was because of that like, it doesn't show up now. That's that. So yeah, it was a 30 bird lek in 2009. New lek that was just discovered.
Thoughts?
So that information was available in 2010?
Yes.
There was PIS in the wood farms.
Yeah, there were Met towers up here, and so it was in process for wind. That particular project has gone away now. Those two particular projects have gone away.
It was clipped back to the 5.3 in 2010, correct?
No, it was based on this lek here going out to here. So that was in 2010. That was I think that was orange out to here. So that was the justification for, okay, we're going to go out to the rim here.
And then they just went to the rim and followed the rim around, which is the line.
And then it got trimmed back. Yeah, there's the 2010. Then it got trimmed back because of the wind to here. Okay, all they're saying is now the wind is gone. Those particular projects.
We know better than the wind is gone.
That's the point on spring.
Right.
At the White Mountain.
Thought.
I was the one opposing back in Rock Springs grazing.
Okay. The landowner doesn't want it.
And, looking at the density map, I feel we're not, the bottom section especially, we're not picking up any grouse. Was my thought.
Okay. Other thoughts?
How much of that is private?
Half.
It's checkerboard.
I certainly couldn't support it biologically and for that reason as well. No way.
Others?
I'm gonna agree.
Leave it as is. Okay.
Okay, we're going up to the north where you'll be happy to know that I'm not in jail for violating wilderness study areas like we covered last time. The BLM guys were watching on the screen, yelling at their computers saying, no, that's not the right line. So, right here, this is the lek that I checked, which is almost 100 herds this year.
Now, where is this, Tom? What area is this?
These are the sand dunes over here. Farson would be northeast of where we just were. Okay, there's a proposal from Wild Earth Guardians. That's who submitted this proposal for the entire polygon. The local working group looked at it, said, no, this is a big sand dune. There's also sand dune here, but they said there's flockets in here, which are the ponds, the interdunal ponds that have green vegetation around them and so forth. And to buffer this lek, the working group was in consensus to add the blue area. And the Sgit group was
Unanimous.
unanimous,
Smaller.
unanimous for the blue.
Okay, so the recommendation is to add the blue area.
Yes.
Did you see the
We have
density?
observation form, observations for this.
Hold on, y'all. That's-
There's density.
There's the density. What did you ask?
You're not gonna find any observations because wilderness study area is in here, it just isn't on that plaque.
Well, it certainly, I mean, the line's a little funky, but it certainly buffers that the full buffer.
It's the density criteria. It's the density.
It does, yeah.
Real quick, how can we have a density area if we don't have any observation data?
It's based on the that left, 54 bird
It's
left.
just the buffer around the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in a little more? That doesn't look awesome to me.
For that area, it looks stupendous.
Yeah, this is a big sand dune. There's, the flockets are on the edges of that. I mean, this is definitely good stuff up here. I had the same question on that sand dune, but that's what the local working group recommended.
Yeah, you got 2 unanimous recommendations, 9.3. So, okay. All right, next.
Yeah, let's just go right next door here. This is the Continental Divide. Don't zoom in quite yet. This is the Bridger coal mine, open pit mine here. Get your bearings, Interstate 80s going down here. Okay, this proposal came in after the local working group met, so they talked about this on Monday. It's a proposal from Anadarko, who owns the minerals here, to remove this, but it's a coal mine issue, not oil and gas. The local working group the other day was split on this, not consensus. I've got the notes over there. I think it was like 7-3, something like that. So I think the majority in this case, it was a consensus. I'm trying to remember the balance for against.
Yeah, it was more than 50-50.
Yeah. I could get that if it's necessary, but it wasn't consensus. And the local, our group was?
Consensus to leave it as it is.
Consensus to leave.
This is 3A.
This is 3A.
This is one, there is not an existing.
Consensus was to leave it as is.
Yeah.
Any dissent?
Stay as core.
Stay just as it
Just
is.
stay as core.
Okay, move on.
Almost done. We're moving south of the, let's do the little ones first down there. Hiawatha. Going to the Colorado border, essentially. Yeah, right down here. We'll finish up with this. Okay, this is a proposal from QEP to remove that piece. We're going to want this Colorado's done a major research project down here. This is going to take a little while to populate. The sagebrush in here are stringers, mostly salt desert shrub, grassland. Local working group was in consensus to remove this, and our group was
In consensus as well to remove.
so unanimous from everybody that that was okay to remove based on habitat.
Consensus to remove. Any dissent? Okay.
Let's go straight east. Right on the Colorado border. I put Colorado core in. Through part of that research that Colorado's done, they discovered these 3 new leks here that total over 200 birds. So this is a new proposal from within the local working group to add to Colorado's core, essentially, but not encroaching into this EIS, the Hiawatha area, regardless of those bird use.
Except for like the Joe Roxburgh's crazy comment about alternate.
Yeah, it wasn't, yeah, that,
No specifics.
yeah, it was actually Pete Aaron, it was Pete Aaron.
Oh.
I think, who was part of Rockford Greater, but, anyway, yeah.
So what's the recommendation?
Unanimous to add.
The yellow line there is local working group, and the industry rep. Similar discussions what you've had here in terms of leasing under the idea that it was non-core. So.
Any objection? Okay.
Last one. Somewhat complex, but not too bad. Okay, originally this was a proposal for the South Central local working group to simply remove this polygon right here. This was created in 2010 through the revision process, through the comments and so forth was received. This stuff was not added due to land development in here. I think there was wind and oil and gas involved in here. It was condensed down to what you see here. And Darko's has plans in here, so they're asking for that to be removed. They were asked, okay, can you find something in return that the hope, the idea was that we might find something over on Atlantic Rim that we talked about earlier. We mentioned that wasn't deemed possible. So they did come back with these polygons here and over here. The South Central Local Working Group was a non-consensus, and they wanted to hear back. But they don't have a part of this discussion. So the Southwest group talked about this the other day. Again, it came in after the local working group meeting. It was split. Again, non-consensus. Thoughts were that the number of birds in here did not match these. And in this case, a lot of this is canyon land, juniper country. That line was drawn by the local working group in 2010 for a definite reason, the way it is. Those that were in support of the proposal considered this addition down here as some compensation for up here. Go ahead and put the chapter 33 back. Oh yeah, let's do disturbance first. So you can see why some of these areas were drawn the way they were on here. There's also coal mine up here, Black Butte. So couldn't go out and gather much more there. Here's Black Butte.
So what is the recommendation?
What is ours?
Ours was 8-2 to leave us as is.
So, yeah.
And as is the green.
With
as is, no change.
Yes, so no change. The green 27B stays in, 27As are not added.
That's what it is right now.
Okay.
That's what it looks like.
So was that vote, you did not include new, right? Because
The new was handled separately.
yeah, that's what I thought, okay.
And the paired projects were what shown in 27A.
Yeah. This is the proposal. A couple of the local working group members said this indicated for this.
We didn't.
As is, then you would reject the additions proposed and you would reject the one taken off.
Yes.
Okay. Any objection to as is?
You know, we're not talking about that lower one at all. Right?
No,
no, John's done.
we already did that.
This is as is
Yep.
today.
Okay? Is that it?
That's it for Southwest.
Okay, that's it. You can certainly go around the room if you would like. I'll give you an opportunity and see if anybody has anything you want to add. The 27th, we have a couple of items left on the EO. We've got working groups to bring us back recommendations on those. We have one carryover from Southwest, and then we will do the other 4 mapping. And I'll let you know when we're going to meet when you get there. sometime in the morning on the 27th. Right now, I'm going to guess it's 8:30, but I'll have to get Mary to remind me. So, Mark, any comments?
No, I'm good.
Joe? Great. Go
I'd just like to say, Tom, I've seen Tom in the local working group and what he's done every time here, all those meetings, stellar leadership.
I agree. Good job, Tom, and to your group as well. Yeah. John, Larry?
Right. I have a real simple recommendation, and that is that we stop talking about our core area plan and start talking about our core area program. And really start, and I know that I'm pretty serious here, that we change our language around this, because a lot of what we say sounds speculative, future. We've been doing this a while, and we need to credit ourselves and give it the corroboration that it needs.
Well said. Susan? That's it?
I'm not, if we meet on the 27th, I'm not gonna have it ready by the end of the month. Just saying, guys.
What?
So I'm gonna need more than like 1 day.
4 days.
No, I'm a little worried.
All right, we'll work.
Okay.
Okay. Ready? All right. Right. Yes. Good. All right, just on my behalf, thank you all. It is unbelievable to watch you work. Your integrity is incredible. Your patience and your perseverance and your ability to sit here and go through this stuff. You should all be congratulated. You are one hell of a team. So thank you all very much. And we'll see you the 27th.